there! You're listening to Fanfic Web Novel, where we explore every what if in your favourite worlds. Thanks for joining the family. Grab a seat and enjoy the story.
Chapter 31. A week later, I'd gathered all of the people who were even remotely important together for a little meet-up. Elijah had faltered at seeing Katerina glued to my side, but had stayed quiet about it for the moment. He was never one to make a scene in a crowded room. I settled into a large comfortable chair and looked around at everyone with a wide grin. So, it's time to move things forward. We are finally prepared to lure Klaus into town. Damon pipes up here, and I can tell Elijah doesn't appreciate the baby vampire voicing his opinion due to the way he frowns slightly. Yeah? How do we do that? You got Elijah here pretty easily. Got any more vampires hidden away that Klaus will come running for? I grin and glance at Catherine, only for her to swallow thickly. She stays silent though, knowing her words won't persuade me from a course I've chosen one way or another. Elijah speaks up next. Surely one of your witches could get a message to him and draw him in. The head of the group of archivists I've brought into town nods at this, affirming that she could easily do so, but I just shake my head and wave a hand dismissively. Of course they could, but why bother? I can just text him. Everyone in the room just looks at me for several long moments. Elijah is the one who finally voices what everyone else is thinking. What? I grin. I have his number. I can text him and tell him to come to Mystic Falls any time. Elijah gives me the most deadpan look I've ever seen from him, before letting out a slow sigh and pinching the bridge of his nose. Then do so, please. I chuckle and pull my phone out of my pocket, scrolling through my contacts until I find Klaus' newest number, only a week old. I hit messaging and write out a quick text before clicking send. There. Alaric can't help speaking up now, curiosity overriding whatever had been keeping him silent. What did you send him? I grin. For the first text? I sent "Hey loser." Once again everyone in the room is staring at me except for Elijah, who's looking to the ceiling as if just finally realizing I've become a juvenile troll in the centuries we've been apart. I continue grinning for a moment longer before looking down at my phone and frowning. No response yet. Let me try again. This time I speak out what I'm typing. Hey loser, heard you have daddy issues. Wanna talk about it? Elijah has his face in his hands and everyone else in the room has something between amused and horrified looks on their faces. Suddenly my phone begins ringing and I smile. Ah. There he is. Accepting the call, I hold a finger to my lips and put the phone on speaker. Everyone in the room is silent as Klaus' English accent comes through the phone, his tone more than a little enraged. I don't know who this is, but you can start running because when I find you your suffering will be biblical. I can't help myself, I chuckle. Now brother, is that any way to talk to family? Klaus is silent for several long moments before finally responding. How did you get this number, Vali? I grin as I respond. Come on Klaus, give me some credit. I have this number, I have your backup number, and I have the numbers of both of the witches you're currently cavorting around with. Maddock and Greta, right? Keeping tabs on you is one of my favorite pastimes. All I get in response is a frustrated growl from Klaus. Fine. Why are you calling me? I keep my tone casual. Well, there were a couple things I had to tell you. Now let's see. First of all, I'm a bit late with this one, but Michael's dead. Elijah's mouth falls open and he collapses into a nearby chair at that particular revelation, but he manages to keep from saying anything. Klaus is a bit more verbal as he practically yells into the phone. What? How? When? I chuckle again. I killed him, of course. I didn't appreciate you directing him towards me, by the way, brother. I know you told him the truth in that opera house in 1919. He found me in 1925 and I was forced to end his life. So tragic. I can practically hear Klaus gritting his teeth, and I'm supposed to just believe you? Why am I just hearing about this now? Well, I've got no real way to prove it to you, though I can show you his ashes if you like. And I already told you why you're just hearing this now. I was very cross at you for your part in sending him after me. I lost a very good friend because of you. My scolding tone clearly gets to him as he snarls. If that is all, Vali, I think it best we spend another 500 years not talking to each other. I stop him before he can hang up the phone. Ah, but that isn't it, Nick. There's one other thing. Klaus groans into the phone, then spit it out. I grin wickedly. I have the doppelganger and the moonstone. I also have a werewolf and a vampire to sacrifice. I thought you might want to come over with a witch or two trained in performing the ritual, and get this pesky curse. We're both so tired of broken next week on the full moon. There's straight-up silence for several moments. The room is quiet as everyone has long since lost the ability to speak from my audacity, and Klaus is clearly dumbfounded as well. Eventually he speaks again. "Where are you?" I chuckle. "Oh, a little place you might know very well. Mystic Falls ring any bells? It is after all the town built on where we grew up as mortals 1,000 years ago." Klaus' tone is exasperated as he replies, "Yes. I know the town. I'll be there before the full moon." I smile wide. "Wonderful. I look forward to your arrival, brother. Try not to kill too many people on your way to me. You'll find I'm going by the name Vali Masters these days. My property is on the outskirts of the town." Klaus sighs. "The name is a bit on the nose, isn't it?" I chuckle. "Well, I wasn't going to keep calling myself Mikaelson when I've never actually been his son, was I?" There's a long pause as Klaus realizes the validity of that statement and recognizes that he has in fact been using the hated name of his vengeful stepfather for 1,000 years despite that same stepfather doing his best to kill him. "No? I suppose not." He hangs up immediately after that and I look at the dumbfounded room with a wide grin. I get so very few chances to be the annoying little brother. That was fun. Damon rolls his eyes in response, the venerated timeless master in all of his childish glory. I chuckle in response, about to reply with my own biting remark about Damon's penchant for seducing teenage girls when Elijah interrupts. "Father is truly dead?" I blink at that, looking away from Damon to where my brother is staring at me with a strange mix of relief and sadness. I smile grimly. "Yes, Elijah. Michael came at me with the intent to destroy everything I'd built and kill me. So I ended him." Elijah seems speechless at this, so I lean forward in my chair and lock eyes with him from across the room. My hands clasp together as my elbows rest on my knees and I speak quietly in the silent space, doing my best menacing tone. "You should know, Elijah, if necessary I can kill everyone currently in this room, even you. This is not a threat, merely a statement of fact." Elijah is caught in my gaze, his entire body tense and his back straight, but slowly he nods. I proceed to grin disarmingly and finish with, "Luckily for you, I'm siding with you over my blood brother. While we may only share blood through our mother, I will not let Rebecca, Cole, and Finn go unavenged." Elijah smiles tentatively back at that, and the rest of the room suddenly finds the ability to breathe again after my moment of casually talking about killing them all. Damon blows air through his teeth. "Damn man, I take it back, you aren't childish, okay?" I just laugh, standing up and forcing Katerina to move off the arm of the chair I'd been sitting in. "Come now, Damon, backtracking? Grow a spine sometime in the next century, all right?" I walk out of the room without even dismissing anyone, Katerina trailing after me as quickly as she could, probably hoping I'd want some alone time. Behind me I heard Damon turn to Alaric. He says that, but he's never felt what it's like to have someone close their hand around your heart and then hold it in place for a few minutes. I grin and pull Katerina close as I slip into a nearby storage room. I'm not in the mood for a bed right now. Chapter 32. Elijah comes to me the next day with a frown etched across his disapproving face. "You did not tell me you had Katerina as well as the new doppelganger." I raise an eyebrow, "Didn't I?" "Apologies, Elijah, it must have slipped my mind." Elijah sighs, clearly knowing it didn't, but moving on with the conversation. "She is different. I assume she went to you for protection like Rosemarie and Trevor, but what happened afterwards to change her in this way?" I laugh at that. "Oh no, Elijah, far from it. She started out as my prisoner. I came upon her while investigating rumors of something strange happening here in Mystic Falls in 1864. She was about to hand over the moonstone to a Lockwood werewolf at the time I found her. I broke her neck, took the moonstone, and pledged to free the Lockwoods from the curse one day." I grin wickedly. "After that I spent 12 decades twisting Katerina to my whims. The girl you know is still there, she just finds it hard to be her sarcastic fiery self around me, her master." Elijah looks at me with some disdain. "Yes, I've noticed how much you enjoy your playthings and their deference to you. I received a taste of it when Ravia arrived in New Orleans to serve us on your behalf, but I didn't realize just how deep your need for control over those around you went until now." I smile at the pointed barb. This is why I'm glad you're here, Elijah. You're right in a way, I do exercise a great degree of control over my subordinates. Perhaps too great even. But now you're here to tell me how it is. Klaus will be here soon enough himself, and I will finally have peers again. It's quite a novel experience, one I hadn't realized how much I missed." Elijah frowns, then release Katerina. He says it so simply that I can't help but laugh again. Elijah, I had no idea you cared so much, brother. Did not Katarina's actions leave you stuck in a box for 50 years, as you were so quick to remind me when I stopped you from killing Trevor? Is it her beauty that makes her more worthy of life than Trevor? Elijah clenches his jaw. Trevor showed a lack of loyalty, while Katarina just wished to continue living. She swore no oaths to us, and you've just told me that she's spent 120 years paying for her escape. I am ready to forgive her, but Klaus will not be so. It would be best if she was gone before he arrived. I grin at that. No, he won't be, will he? You need not worry, Elijah. I have no intentions of letting Klaus play with my toys. As for freeing her, Katarina darling, please join us. I call out the last part, and in a flash Katarina is beside me, looking at Elijah with some gratitude. She has after all heard every bit of our conversation. Elijah frowns at her being included in this discussion and looks at me as if wondering why I called her out here. I just smile and look to Katarina. Darling, do you wish to be free? Katarina shivers under my gaze. No, master, my place is at your side. Elijah opens his mouth to say something, but I cut him off with a raised hand before asking Katarina again. Katarina, I want the truth. Do you wish to be free of me? She whimpers as she's forced to answer honestly. I don't know anymore. Before you made me forget and let me go, I did. But now I've tasted life without you and I can't stand it. I wish I didn't have to spend every moment within 100 feet of you for fear of the pain, but I could not imagine living apart from you. I am yours as long as you'll have me. I smile wickedly as I look at Elijah. Ah, well, my brother has said I've been exercising too much control. Consider the range compulsion lifted, Katarina. Katarina looks shocked and happy while Elijah just shakes his head. You would be better off removing all memory of you from her mind and letting her get back to living her life free of your influence. I can't help but roll my eyes at that before looking to Katarina. What do you think, darling? Erase the last 150 years of your memory? Think it would work? She shakes her head empathetically. No, master. I grin. I didn't think so. Humor me though, Katarina, say I did that anyway. You wake up as your old self, missing a century and a half of time. Perhaps Elijah is there to help you adjust. He tells you you're better off without the memories, says that they would break you. What would you do? Katarina flicked her eyes to Elijah before looking away from both of us. I would look for a way to kill Elijah temporarily, through either dagger or stake to the heart. I would do anything to remove the compulsion. I sigh and pull her onto my lap suddenly, petting her curls affectionately. Of course you would. Katarina Petrova would not rest until she was whole once more, until she'd found what was taken from her, even if it was detrimental to her very personality. Katarina shivered under my touch, but pressed back against me, almost nuzzling into my hand and looking anywhere but Elijah, who looked stone-faced now. I sigh and give Elijah a smile. How about this, brother? Once Klaus is dealt with, we can revisit the issue of darling Katarina. Right now we should be focused on avenging our siblings, don't you think? After a long moment, Elijah nods and leaves the room. I just grin as he goes and pull Katarina in closer for a searing kiss. Sometimes it was fun just to explore her mouth with my tongue for a while, instead of bending her over and fucking her against the chair, as I'd done more than once before. A few days later, Klaus arrives with his witches in tow on my doorstep. I've sent most everyone off to the sidelines for now, leaving just my vampires, Katarina, and Elena with me in my mansion. As Klaus and his companions were escorted in, I was sat on a couch with a doppelganger on either side of me, grinning wickedly. He stops and purses his lips together as he takes in the sight before him. Elena is glazed over at this point, looking like she's on some rather strong drugs, as I grew tired of her whining a while ago and dealt with her through compulsion. Katarina, on the other hand, is very aware of Klaus' gaze and is trying her best to shrink back into the couch and hopefully disappear forever. Eventually, Klaus looks at me and smiles thinly. You didn't tell me you'd managed to capture Katarina Petrova as well. It isn't even my birthday, brother. I grin wickedly in response. Well now, who had the moonstone last? She came with it when I finally tracked it down. Bringing a hand up, I run it through Katarina's curls, petting her hair and leaving her shuddering at my touch. But really, brother, she's not for you. Finders Keepers says I caught her first and now she's mine. Klaus doesn't look at all happy at that, his eyes trailing over the way Katarina actually seems to be enjoying my touch. Katarina and I have some unfinished business, Vali. You would do well to not stand in the way of that. I sigh. A compromise then, brother. You mustn't forget I share in the pain she's caused through her actions. Since I found her first, I get her for the next decade. After that, we can swap her back and forth until we both feel she's outlived her usefulness. Fair? Klaus still doesn't seem happy with the compromise, but he slowly nods anyways. Fine. Though from the looks of things what you wish to do with Katarina differs wildly from what I want. But we are immortal, so what's 10 years? Just know that if she escapes or dies on your turn, I will be very cross with you. I smile and nod in agreement. Klaus proceeds to ignore Katarina entirely, instead flashing over to Elena and looking her over with a slowly growing grin. Wonderful. To hear that heartbeat in her chest, to know she's human and very much still usable. I can almost forgive you for waiting nearly 100 years to tell me about our father's demise, Vali. I smile in response. Yes, well, I've already forgiven you for sicking him on me in the first place with no warning, so I suppose I'm the more magnanimous brother. Speaking of forgiveness, how are our siblings? Klaus turns away at that, hiding his features from me under the guise of studying the room we're currently in as he answers. Elijah is in the wind, while our other 2 brothers and darling little sister take a nap. I hem at that before replying. I hope you know I expect them to be undaggered after we break the curse. Michael is dead, we will be all we can be again. It's time to throw those foul daggers away, Nick. Our parents have forsaken us, but we who are their children need not follow their footsteps. Klaus turns to me at that, frowning. Yet, you and I are not Michael's children. We are the bastards. The others will always look down on us for that. Perhaps it would be better if they stayed asleep and we worked together to create a new world. A world of hybrids. I purse my lips together at that, but can see that Klaus will not be persuaded by me here and now, nor do I wish to poison him against me further at this time. Eventually I just nod slowly. We'll discuss this after the ritual is done, brother. Once we're both whole again, we can get our priorities in order. I assume your witches are ready for tomorrow night. At this I glance at Maddock and Greta, both of whom look suitably respectful of me given my status as another hybrid, but also a little bit affronted by my clear lack of subservience to their master. Klaus speaks for them though, grinning. More than ready. I hope you were not lying when you said you had the vampire and werewolf ready to sacrifice. I don't know where we'd find a werewolf on short notice if not. I chuckle and stand, my hand coming up to clasp Klaus' shoulder. Oh, no need to worry there, I've taken care of everything, brother. In just a short amount of time we will be free of 1,000 years of weakness. Klaus responds by grinning and mirroring my action. I look forward to it. XX scene breaks X. Soon enough it was time, the next day flying by as things were prepared. Eventually we all stood at the ritual site. All of my vampires ringed the large clearing that we now stood in. Elijah and the Martins were hidden somewhere amongst them, waiting for their chance. Greta assisted Maddock in preparing the stone cistern that would contain the ritual, and Klaus stood beside me as we looked at our 3 sacrifices. Both Elena and Isabel were dazed by compulsion, while Brady was forced to his knees and bound by gag and shackles. Klaus had complained about it all not being nearly dramatic enough, but after I'd confirmed that giant circles of fire were not a necessity for the ritual to go through with Maddock, I'd vetoed any of the over-theatric parts. This was going to go right, and it was going to go simple. Soon enough, things began, and after handing the moonstone over to Maddock, I got a front-row seat to watching the curse being undone. As Maddock began the casting, Klaus approached Brady. Once they reached the right point in the ritual, Klaus stepped forward and tore Brady's heart from his chest before flashing over to the cistern and draining the bloody organ into it. Everyone watched with bated breath as the flames grew higher and the ritual reached a new tempo. Next came Isabel, unresistant as Klaus pulled forth a wooden stake and slammed it into her unbeating heart. There was less fanfare than I remembered from the show, and I enjoyed that. No crying and whining over people dying and all that, no over-the-top dramatics from Klaus. Everything was just being done in the right way for once, and I could feel the curse beginning to lift as the moonstone it was tied to had magic worked over it. Finally, it was time for Elena. I beckoned her forward and stepped up to the cistern with my brother. Like her birth mother, she was unresistant as Klaus pulled her hair away and leaned down to bite into her neck. At the same time I bit into her wrist, and together we drank the young doppelganger dry of her supernatural blood. It was nothing but a few moments before she was dead, and Klaus and I simultaneously dropped her body to the ground, our eyes the golden black of a hybrid, our 2 sets of fangs now exposed to the blinding moonlight. We were whole once more. A moment later, our bones began to break as an uncountable number of suppressed wolf changes tried to express themselves. To turn on the full moon required one to break every bone in their body, and that's what was happening to us now, only 1,000 times over. It was a moment when we'd both be nearing the peak of our power yet also uniquely vulnerable for a short time. Luckily for me, I had no enemies here tonight. Klaus was the one who had people to fear. As I moved away from him and closer to the protective half-circle my vampires were forming for me, Elijah and the Martins made their moves. In a blaze of magic, Jonas Martin brought an already weak Klaus to his knees. Turns out repeated brain aneurysms along with breaking every bone in your body aren't a good combination. At the same time that Jonas moved in, Elijah flashed forward and broke Maddox's neck, while Luca cast what I could only assume was some sort of sleep spell on his sister, as it dropped her almost instantly. Before Klaus could recover from Jonas' assault and kill the witch for his impertinence, Elijah was standing over him. I saw Klaus' eyes widen at the appearance of our elder brother, saw the way his gaze flickered over to me and my vampires, noting how we did nothing. Elijah smiled grimly down at Klaus. "Hello, brother." Klaus just looked up at him, too weak to move, and a moment later Elijah's hand went through his chest and closed around Klaus' heart. Elijah stared down into his brother's eyes and spoke slowly as he prepared to pull the heart from its resting place. "In the name of our family, Niklaus." Nick was quick to interrupt, of course, speaking hurriedly. "I didn't bury them at sea. Their bodies are safe." Elijah freezes up as I knew he would. "What?" Klaus is quick to capitalize on the pause in his execution. "If you kill me, you will never find them, Elijah." Elijah is clearly lost, as he actually looks to me of all people for advice. I can barely talk by this point, but I managed to do so anyways, as straining as it is. "You spent the last millennium with him, Elijah. It's up to you to trust him or not." Klaus rejoins the conversation, continuing to try to convince his older brother not to kill him. "I can take you to them, Elijah. I give you my word." After one more long moment of thought, Elijah pulls his hand free of Klaus' chest and stumbles back from him. Klaus continues to shift, roaring in pain as his bones continue to break. I'm gasping myself now as I look to my vampires. "All of you should run. These woods won't be safe for any of you in less than an hour. Get the Martin witches out of here." Said vampires react immediately to the order, not a single one hesitating as they gather the 3 witches and speed off towards the relative safety of the town. Elijah stands back and watches as Klaus and I change, our entire body breaking down to shift into the form of the wolf. I catch Klaus' eyes from across the clearing and grin ferally, baring my teeth to him. He doesn't return the gesture, his face instead full of condemnation for how I sided with Elijah over him. A few moments later, our shared gaze was broken by our bodies twisting unnaturally. After that, we both rose to our 4 paws, the transformation complete. Klaus initiated hostilities, snarling at me and launching across the clearing towards me. I was more than ready for him, even if both of us were completely unused to the bodies we were currently using. We healed too fast to take serious injury as we tore at one another, biting and clawing and slamming one another into the ground again and again. I'm not sure if Elijah stayed nearby the entire time, but I know that Klaus killed nobody during the next 2 days we spent locked in near constant combat, breaking apart only once in a while to look for a new route of attack that would give us an advantage. We fought and fought and fought, coating the forest in hybrid blood as we did our absolute best to tear each other apart. But all good things come to an end, and so did our enthusiastic fighting, as the second day dawned and we finally began to change back. Chapter 33. As Klaus and I rise from our spots in the brush, naked as the day we were each born, we're staring at one another, easily ready to continue our fight even now. Elijah interrupts the tense moment by throwing clothing at both of us, breaking the mood and prompting wide grins to spread across our faces. As we begin to dress, Klaus spoke up. "That was amazing. How long has it been?" Elijah answers easily, "Almost 2 days. The moon came and went and you both remained wolves." I jump into the conversation even as I button up my pants. "Yes, we can change at will now." Klaus grins. "Good to know. I remember every moment of it. You've become quite vicious over the centuries, little brother. Or was that just the wolf in you coming out?" I chuckle at that. "Oh no, that was all me. Consider it a bit more payback for doing such a good job at convincing Elijah that you put our siblings in the sea, that I actually—
Whoa. Hold up. Stop for a sec. Look, if you've already made it this far into the video and you're still here, Come on, subscribe, bro. Help a brother out, man. It's one tiny click for you, but it's a massive, and I mean massive, heck yeah for me. Plus, it keeps the algorithm from thinking I'm boring, and we both know that's a total lie. All right. I'm done. I'll get out of the way now so you can get back to the good stuff. Stick around and finish listening. It's worth it. Peace.
I believed him when he came to me. Not a very nice prank, Nick. Elijah interjects before Klaus can respond, handing us both pairs of shoes now. Enough, I believe we have a bargain. Klaus sounds positively gleeful in his response. That's right. Now what was it again? Oh yes, wait, I remember. You wish to be reunited with our family. Elijah clenches his jaw at the tone his brother is using. You gave me your word, Klaus. Klaus smiles. Yes, what kind of brother would break his bond, even though you did try to kill me? And you almost let him? He points to me at the end of that and I just smile, shrugging. He looks between us for a moment long before smiling. All is forgiven. I'll bring you to them soon enough, Elijah. With that he turns and begins walking away. Elijah looks at me and I just smile before moving to follow, having a rather good idea of what comes next. XX scene breaks X. Klaus led us into town to an apartment that he'd clearly set up with his witches. As we three walked inside, he looked back at us and grinned. After 2 days of brawling, I am famished. Blood bags all around and then we'll head out so that I may fulfill my obligation to you, Elijah. Klaus walks deeper into the apartment and I can't help but turn to Elijah and distract him, even though I am almost positive what's going to happen in a few moments. Well, Elijah, do you trust him? Elijah works his jaw up and down. You may not understand how important family is after so much time away, Valley, but all I have left is this hope. So yes, I trust Klaus will reunite me with our siblings. From behind Elijah, Klaus speaks, and so I shall. And as Elijah turns, Klaus slams the white oak silver dagger home into our older brother's heart. I watch as Elijah cries out in pain and begins to fall, and I watch as Klaus half catches him and lowers our brother's slowly graying body to the ground. Klaus begins to stand and I finally stop watching as he speaks in a low tone as he turns to me. Now, what am I going to do with Yodash? I cut him off by slipping the gold dagger gripped in my left hand in between his ribs and into his heart in a symbolistic duality of the ambush he just delivered onto Elijah. His eyes go wide as he stares at me, the magic on the dagger already taking effect. He only has time to get out a single word as he falls. What? I kneel beside him as he begins to go gray and speak casually, running my fingers over the hilt of the dagger currently buried in his chest. Do you not remember what I told you, Klaus, 5 centuries ago? There would come a time where I would expect you to throw the silver daggers into the sea and free our siblings. Michael is dead by my hand and the curse is broken by yours. This was your chance to put an end to your hatred and let our family be whole again. I look down at his almost fully gray body, eyes still wide open and staring at me accusingly, and I shake my head. And you let that chance go? Did you think I would not be able to deal with you, Klaus? I killed Michael in 5 minutes after you ran from him for 900 years. Unlike you, I did not spend the last 1,000 years learning how to run. I spent it learning how to win. The light in his eyes has gone out and I'm not sure he's heard my final words to him, but either way it matters not as I reach up and brush his eyelids down so that he's no longer staring at me. I spend one more beat looking down upon the face of the man I used to root for 1,000 years previous, in a life that seems like nothing but a blink of time at this point, before turning from him back to Elijah. I can't help but talk to the corpse of my older half-brother. Poor honorable Elijah, so honorable to the point of foolishness. What am I going to do with you? This is a pivotal moment for me and I know it. I can leave the dagger in Elijah and hide away all of my siblings where they will never be found or disturbed. I can be the ultimate power on the earth, with no peers, only subordinates. Yet I know I'd grow bored of that, of controlling anyone and everyone and never having anyone who can stand even close to equal with me. If I choose not to remove the dagger now, I will decide to do it one day, and the time I wait will determine whether I am seen as the savior or as the sad lonely boy who wanted the company of the siblings he abandoned. At the end of the day, there was only one choice to be made here. With a sigh, I reach down and pull the silver dagger from Elijah's breast before picking up his body and laying it out on the bed. Then I go searching for the blood bags Klaus mentioned and pour myself a drink. Nick had one thing right. After 2 days of brawling with someone who was my equal in strength, agility, and endurance, I was famished. XX scene breaks X. When Elijah wakes up, he comes off of the bed suddenly, looking around and frowning in disbelief as he realizes he's in the same place still. He catches sight of me sitting in the kitchen and brings a hand to the bloody hole in his shirt. How long was I? What happened, Vali? I grin and toss him a fresh blood bag, which he gratefully sips from to remove the unhealthy pallor from his skin. To answer your unfinished question, I pulled the dagger out of you less than 5 minutes after Klaus put it in. To answer your second question, well, probably best to look for yourself. I point to an area out of sight of the bed, and in a flash Elijah is off of the bed and across the room, looking to where I'm pointing and looking upon Niklaus' grey corpse, dagger sprouting from his chest. Elijah is understandably shocked. How is this possible? It's a gold version of the daggers used on you and our siblings. Because there is no silver, it doesn't heal werewolves, and thus it works on Niklaus. I'm not sure how aware you were of what Cole was working on back in 1914 when Klaus daggered him for betrayal, but it was close to what this was. Unlike Cole, I had hundreds of years to perfect this weapon. Elijah just stares at Klaus' grey face for several moments before moving to kneel beside him. While I would love nothing more than to leave this in for at least a century, we need him to tell us where he's hid our family. With that said, he reached for the hilt of the dagger, clearly intent on pulling it out. As his hand began to close around it, however, he found himself rebuffed. A shimmering force kept him from pulling the dagger free, and as he struggled against it, it proceeded to throw him back from Klaus' body entirely. In an instant Elijah was on his feet and looking at me accusatorily. What is this? I sigh as I sip some delicious O-negative. I did say I'd perfected it, didn't I? This dagger can only be very loosely compared to the white oak silver daggers, Elijah. For instance, this dagger is specifically made for Niklaus. It would not work on me. It's also specifically made to be used by me and me alone. Nobody else can even touch it at this point given the magic woven into it. Elijah grits his teeth together. Then you need to pull it out, Vali. He's the only one who knows where our brothers and sister rest. I just shake my head in response. No, he isn't. My brother just stares at me blankly now, but it's clear he's losing his patience as his expression hardens. Explain. I shrug my shoulders. I know where they are, Elijah. I own the storage house Nick put them in, not that he knew that. Hell, I own the city that storage house resides in. Elijah spreads his arms in disbelief. Then why this charade? Why didn't you tell me earlier? Why did you let me almost kill our brother for his perceived murders? I smile thinly and point at the dagger in Klaus' chest. Because I know Klaus better than you think, Elijah. I knew what he'd do to you. I knew if I gave you the information on our siblings and you freed them, he'd hunt all of you to the ends of the earth. I step forward and clasp my hand on Elijah's shoulder, looking him in the eyes. Elijah, if things had played out the way you think they should have, Klaus would have become like Michael in his single-minded hunt for you all. He would not have rested until he found all 4 of you and put you back under his thumb. Both he and Michael had to be dealt with before our family could truly be safe. Now that they are, we can awaken the others and everyone can finally live their lives. Elijah narrows his eyes at that, frowning severely. Are we to live in fear of you then, Vali? Are you to take Klaus' place as our jailer, as the man who keeps our family together even at the cost of our individual happiness? I sigh at that and shake my head, releasing Elijah's shoulder and stepping away to look down at Klaus. No, Elijah. If that was what I wanted, do you think I would have spent 1,000 years away? You and I both know I could have taken a place by Klaus' side any time as an equal, and there's nothing he or any of you could have done about it. I turn back to Elijah as I finish my explanation. 500 years ago, I told Niklaus that there would come a day when our father was dead and the curse was broken, and on that day I would expect him to hand over every single white oak dagger, so we could all throw them into the sea together. That day came and Nick made the wrong decision. Now he will sleep and we will be free. Elijah nods slowly, clearly both wary and weary at this point. Very well. Where are our siblings? I grin, flashing my teeth as I drain the rest of the blood from my glass before answering him. Chicago. We can leave now, though I need to call someone on our way there. Elijah nods and in minutes we're in the car, Klaus' body placed carefully in the trunk. I let Elijah drive as I pull out my phone and flip it open, calling the first number in my contacts and holding the phone up to my ear. A moment later the person on the other end picks up and a woman with a posh English accent answers in a very suggestive and sultry tone. Hello, Master, what can I do for you? Are you perhaps in need of some company? I grin and glance at my brother. Elijah is looking at me askance as I just smirk and reply, Ah, Cassie, probably not the best time for phone sex. My brother is sitting beside me. Your voice is pure ecstasy as usual, though. I need you to get me the Vampire Sage's newest number, love. Her tone is a combination of disappointed, apologetic, and annoyed as she replies, Yes, master, and you know I prefer Cassandra. Let me just look it up. Ah, here it is. She rattles off Sage's digits and I grin. Thanks, love. And I know you prefer Cassandra, but I think Cassie suits you better. With that bit of teasing, I hang up on the darling vampire who was in charge of part of my database and dialed up the number she'd given me. Sage picked up on the third ring. Hello? Ah, Sage. I'm so glad you picked up. I'm curious, do you remember my voice? Sage sounds confused and slightly irritated. Not really, no. Who is this and how did you get this number? I grin. It's Vali, darling. Fall of Constantinople, 1450s? We spent a few decades traipsing across Europe together. I know she remembers me as her voice becomes guarded. Vali, how did you get this number? I sigh. Sage, you don't sound happy to hear from me. I'm a little hurt. And to think I was about to invite you to join me in Chicago for a little reunion. I can almost hear her frown as she responds. Look, Vali, we had fun together, but you know I can never reciprocate your feelings for me. My heart belongs to someone else, that's why we had to part ways in the first place. I roll my eyes. Right, the compulsion. Sage, you can go ahead and remember the truth. All of it. There's silence for several long moments before Sage launches into a profanity-laced tirade. I grin at Elijah while he just looks at me with a raised eyebrow and faint disapproval. Eventually Sage calms down, but I can hear the anger in her voice. You used me. I grin. I like to see it as us using each other, Sage. You can't deny we had fun together. Sage doesn't respond to that, instead taking the conversation in a different direction. I don't get why you felt the need to compel me to think I'd sired you. Not to mention convincing me that we parted ways because you were hopelessly in love with me. I sigh at that. It's really complicated, darling. Sage growls, then uncomplicate it for me. I roll my eyes at her persistence and give her what she wants. Well, you see, I had this prank planned out that would have been absolutely amazing. Besides you, I had 2 other vampires of varying ages compelled to believe I sired them. If I hadn't changed things irrevocably along the way, there would have come a time when all 3 of you would have ended up in the same room, all of you thinking you sired me. Can you imagine the looks on all of your faces as you realized the only way for all of you to believe you sired me was for all of you to be compelled? I close my eyes and imagine it, letting out an over-dramatic sigh. It would have been glorious, darling. Once again Sage is silent for several long moments. I begin to think I've broken her rage when she finally responds, her tone seething. You're telling me you fucked with my mind, changed my memories, for a 500-year-old prank that didn't pan out? I nod slowly, even though she can't see it. That sounds about right. You're sick. She hisses that out and then hangs up on me, and I just roll my eyes and look at Elijah. Women right? Elijah just purses his lips together as he looks back at me before responding frankly. I think she's right, Vali. You've become quite unstable while away from us. I laugh that off, even as I text Sage with going to undagger Finn with Elijah. You coming or no? In under a minute Sage is calling me back and I grin, answering the phone with relish. Yes. Sage isn't having any of my crap though as she grinds out. Put Elijah on. I roll my eyes at that but do as she asks, holding the phone out to Elijah, who frowns but speaks. This is Elijah. Sage is quick to react once she hears Elijah's voice. Is what he says true? Finn will be freed. Elijah sighs, yes. Vali and I are heading to Chicago right now. He says he knows the location of our siblings, and we intend to remove the daggers from all of them. Sage is hesitant as she asks the next obvious question. Why would Klaus allow this? I can't help but grin, intrigued to see how Elijah would respond. He can't help smiling a bit himself as he looks at me and answers the question. Klaus doesn't have a say in anything anymore. He's currently indisposed, perhaps permanently depending on Vali. Sage seems curious but clearly unwilling to ask or give me the attention I clearly wanted. Finn had certainly found a keeper in this one. Fine. Text the address and I'll meet you both in Chicago. And if you're lying to me, Vali. I grin and can't help responding a bit cheekily. If I'm lying, you can tie me up and punish me, darling. You certainly enjoyed it quite a lot when I did the same to you. Sage hung up on me again and I just grinned as I tucked my phone away. Elijah just shook his head in clear exasperation as we drove on. Chapter 34. Mystic Falls Interlude, Night of the Sacrifice. The events of this segment are happening during Klaus and Vala's brawl through the forest. After watching his half-brothers tumble off into the woods in a blur of fur and claws, Elijah moved over to Elena's lifeless body and picked her up bridal style. He took a moment to feel sympathy for the poor teenage girl that bore such a close resemblance to two of his past loves before flashing away from the site of the ritual. He arrived at the Gilbert house in no time at all, and handed the body over to a grim-faced Grayson Gilbert as Miranda sobbed in the background. Grayson couldn't help his anger, despite the fact that he knew the man before him was ancient and powerful, so this is what he needed her kept safe for. This is why he came to Mystic Falls. She was always going to be sacrificed, wasn't she? Elijah played with his suit's cuffs for a moment as he considered how best to respond to that. Putting one hand in a pocket, he gestured at Elena with the other. She is not dead. Not permanently anyways. The ritual is complete and my brothers are unbound. However, Vali told me her death is not part of his plans. She will recover by the morning. Miranda's tears are stopping as she processes this, and Grayson looks stupefied. Elijah finishes giving his advice quickly so he can depart. When she wakes up, all compulsions put on her will be gone. She will be distraught. You should try to be nearby. Grayson swallows thickly and nods in thanks. Elijah is gone in a flash and the Gilberts close their door to the dark night. XX scene breaks X. Mystic Falls, a few days after the ritual. Richard, Mason, and Tyler Lockwood had been called to the forest by the werewolf pack that had been living near Mystic Falls for almost 5 years now under Vala's orders. The ritual had supposedly happened only 3 days ago on the night of the full moon. The wolves unfortunately could not be there given exactly what happened to werewolves on the full moon, but the Lockwoods had expected their curse to break during the night if the ritual was successful. It had not, and that left them all feeling confused, worried, and more than a little angry. They were expecting the wolves in the forest to be in the same state, but as they approached the pack's normal camping site, they found a huge party going on. Richard was the one to take the lead as the Alpha caught sight of them and sauntered over, a grin on her face. He frowns at her grin and gestures at the party before asking, "What is this?" The Alpha blinks, smile faltering only a bit before raising an eyebrow. "What do you think it is?" "We're celebrating Mayor. Hope that's not against any of your town's silly rules." Mason steps forward, being a bit more level-headed. "So then it worked? You wouldn't be celebrating if the ritual wasn't successful, right?" The Alpha turns to him, smiling. "Of course it was successful, you doubted Vali? He would have settled for nothing less than the curse being broken, and it has been." Mason smiles back, clearly happy with the news. "I'm glad to hear that. We all are, I'm sure. I suppose we expected the transformation to revert after the curse was broken, but we ended up spending the entire night as wolves." She blinks again and her smile falls from her face. "You don't, right? You three need to come with me." Any relief the Lockwoods had begun to feel was erased by her sudden disquieted attitude as she led them through the party to a large circus tent and motioned them inside. In the tent they found a group of 5 of Vala's archivists, all working with what seemed to be 2 sources of blood. The head archivist looked up and frowns. "We are not ready yet, Rilla. You know the turning will not happen until after the sun sets." Rilla shakes her head and points with her thumb back at the Lockwoods. "Not here about that, I get the whole time thing. I invited these 3 to the party tonight to celebrate and participate, but it turns out they don't know all the facts. Figured you could tell it better than me." The older woman looks to the 3 men with a piercing gaze. Of course, the Lockwoods. "Tell me, what did Master Vali promise you concerning the curse?" Tyler looks confused while Richard frowns severely in thought. Mason, having received the pitch last, responds promptly. "He promised that he'd break it. That after it was gone, we'd have the choice whether we shifted or not." The archivist smiles grimly. "And you do have a choice to make now. The curse of the sun and the moon was, to put it simply, a myth." Richard snarls, stepping forward. "What? What does that even mean?" His outburst causes Rilla to step in between him and the archivists, holding up her hands. Hey. Freak out once you hear everything." The head archivist continues easily, not even fazed by Richard's threatening posture. The curse of the sun and the moon was created several centuries earlier by Master Vala's brothers, Lord Klaus and Lord Elijah, in an effort to focus both the werewolves and the vampires on helping them break the real curse. The real curse was put on Master Vali and Lord Klaus alone by the original witch. It bound their werewolf halves and left them weakened and no longer whole. She pauses to make sure the Lockwoods are listening before she finishes. That is the curse that was broken 3 nights ago on the full moon. And the choice before you now that many of the werewolves outside have already made is whether you are ready to control your own transformation by becoming a hybrid. Mason blinks at that, clearly not following the explanation that well. What? Like Vali? How does that work? He said he couldn't turn werewolves. He receives a grim smile in reply. He could not while cursed. With the original witch's magic undone, he can now make as many hybrids as he wants. This is what you are offered. As a hybrid, you will never have to turn into a wolf again, you will be stronger than most vampires, and your bite will be poisonous to them. You will live forever. Mason looks to the female alphas who's been watching the entire exchange. And you've agreed to this? Everyone outside has agreed to this. Rilla scoffs, turning her chin up. Of course, we were raised with the knowledge that our generation would be the one who would ascend to join Vali. This party is one of many taking place across North and South America as we speak, and by the end of the night there will be thousands of hybrids. If I could, I would ascend tonight myself, but I have to wait. Tyler finally speaks up, brow furrowed. Why do you have to wait? Rilla coughs, suddenly seeming less like a powerful alpha and more like a blushing schoolgirl. We have been told Vali may be able to have children now that the curse is broken. I am hoping to put forth my name for consideration, and we are not sure if hybrid females will be able to have children. All 3 males look rather disturbed at that, so the archivist jumps in again. You have until the sun sets to decide. We will begin once it is dark, and if you do not wish to gain control over your curse, you must be gone by then. Rilla nods. Thank you, archivist. She then turns to the Lockwoods and begins to browbeat them out of the tent. You've got a couple hours to decide. For now, feel free to enjoy the party. You have just as much right to be here as we do. She then leaves the Lockwood males to their own devices. Richard and Mason turn to one another and Mason frowns. What are we going to do? Controlling our transformation is one thing, becoming half vampire is another thing entirely. Before Richard could answer his brother, Tyler spoke up. I'm taking it. Being an immortal hybrid can't possibly be more painful than being forced to break every bone in my body every full moon. Mason frowns at his nephew and opens his mouth to reply only for Richard to interject with a nod. I am as well. Carol is already a vampire, and I don't wish to force her to watch me grow old. I don't want to be forced to watch her stay the same while I wither away and die. Richard smiles grimly. This is the best-case scenario for all of us. Mason narrows his eyes at that. I'm not so sure. I have to think about this. He walks away and Tyler turns to his father. He'll take it. He has to. Anything is better than being trapped by this curse. Richard frowns as he watches his younger brothers retreating back. We can only hope so. In the end, Mason did do it, sticking around when the sun had set and everyone was gathered in the center of the camp. Lined up, one by one the werewolves drank from a goblet of Vala's blood. To the side mats had been laid out, and those who drank removed their tops and lay down upon them. As they did so, the alpha came around and slid a knife into the heart of each one in a single motion. The entire thing felt less like a ceremony and more like an assembly line to the Lockwoods, though those around them seemed much more invested in the ritualistic elements than they were. Halfway through the pack drinking Vala's blood, those who drank first began to wake up and were offered different blood entirely, in a much smaller quantity. Everyone was treated to the sight of these newly made hybrids drinking the blood and stabilizing, their sets of dual fangs coming out and their eyes turning a gold black. Once they were done, they went back to partying, and within 2 hours, everyone who would turn was turned and reveling in their newfound freedom. The archivists packed up and quietly left as the now hybrid pack celebrated long into the night. The Lockwood males ended up splitting, Mason and Richard wishing to head home to their respective significant others, while Tyler stayed, eventually finding a young brunette named Haley that piqued his interest. She'd apparently been orphaned too early to even remember her parents, and her adoptive family knew nothing about the supernatural. When she accidentally killed someone while drunk on a boating trip, her curse triggered and she transformed the first time in the middle of her living room. She was kicked out at the age of 13, only to almost instantly be picked up by Rilla and raised by the pack they were now partying with. Her story was almost tragic, and he was glad he'd had a support structure after he triggered his own curse. She'd apparently tried to run away from the pack more than once in search of her birth parents, but could never quite manage to get out from Rilla's thumb. Haley seemed to consider her more of an older sister than a jailer though from the way she talked. After exchanging stories and life experience for hours, it was only to be expected when clothes flew off and Tyler found himself experiencing rough hybrid sex for the first time with a willing partner who was just as fast, strong, and durable as he. XX scene break sex. Katerina was a combination of annoyed, frustrated, and horny by this point. Vali was gone now, and she'd never thought he'd just leave her behind once caving into Elijah and letting her go outside the 100-foot tether she'd been on for 120 years. But here she was, finding herself alone in Vala's Mystic Falls mansion with nothing to do. Well, she wasn't entirely alone. The place was still staffed with vampires who treated her more like a guest than a pet, thankfully. But they were all boring when compared to her master or even Elijah. Throwing herself onto her bed chest first in a fit of frustration, she groaned as she thought of the road trip she was missing out on. But she hadn't been invited along, and she wasn't going to invite Vala's anger by intruding on whatever he, Klaus, and Elijah were doing now that the curse was broken. She definitely didn't want to draw Klaus' attention to her either. Flopping onto her back she sighed, staring up at the ceiling for several long moments. Eventually her thoughts turned towards the other day, when Vali had dragged her into a random storage closet, bent her over, and pounded her until she reached not one but 4 screaming climaxes. Her hands moved over her body and she soon found herself placing a hand under her shirt and down her pants, massaging her breast as she ran her fingers up and down her slit, whimpering. A few minutes later she was naked and pushing 3 fingers into her wet entrance as she called Vala's name out. Her thumb worked at her clit and her free hand played with her nipples until each was rock hard. No matter how hard she worked, she couldn't truly replicate the feeling of Vala's hands on her body, of his cock inside her. It was thinking about that finally set her over the edge, causing her to open her mouth in a silent scream as she climaxed with thoughts of Vali in her head. She lay back panting, eyes half-lidded as she found herself pouting. She hoped her master came back for her soon. She already missed him. Coming to a decision, she got up off the bed and began getting dressed. She'd go find Vali and watch from afar until whatever family business he was taking care of was done with. Then she'd be there, ready to satisfy his needs. Chapter 35. Chicago. The first thing we did upon arriving at my subordinate's manor in Chicago was stuff Klaus' body into Elijah's empty coffin. Immediately after I placed a heavy padlock on the coffin and a wave of magic washed over it. Nobody without seriously powerful magic would be able to damage the coffin enough to break it open, and nobody besides me could open the lock. By the time that was done, Sage had shown up and I couldn't help grinning and spreading my arms wide as if asking for a hug. Sage, darling. It's so good to see you again. Sage just narrows her eyes dangerously at me. I'm here for Finn. If this was a trick, I swear I'll rip out your guts. I roll my eyes at what all 3 of us know is an empty threat, but I keep the easy smile on my face as I turn to Elijah. Elijah, why don't you go wake up our younger siblings while I take Sage to Finn? You can handle Rebecca and Cole together for an hour, yes? Elijah actually looks a bit daunted by the prospect but nods. I suppose I have enough bombshells to drop on them that they won't grow too bored while we wait. I may wait a bit before undaggering them, so that you are closer to being on your way when they awake. I chuckle and we split up, Sage and I one way while Elijah goes the other. While driving to Chicago, I'd had the coffins moved from the storage house. Klaus kept them into this manor that the vampire I'd put in charge of the city owned. I'd planned this out rather meticulously, and the way I wanted this to go called for Finn in one room and my other 3 siblings in the other. As Sage and I entered the room, it was to find Finn's coffin already open with him laying inside, all gray, dagger still buried in his heart. In a flash, Sage was across the room and her hand was closed around the hilt, ready to pull it free. I blurred to her side and grabbed her wrist before she could do so, causing her to look at me with angry and betrayed eyes. I grin as I preempt what is sure to be a loud exclamation. Before I leave him to you, my dear, there's one more thing I need from you. Sage puts on the bravest face she can muster as she stares back at me with her jaw clenched, but we both know that at this point she'd get down on her knees and suck my cock if I demanded it of her. Fine. What is it? I grin. You don't need to be so upset, darling. You'll like this order. You'll even want to carry it out. When Finn wakes up, if he speaks to the wrong person, he's in danger of becoming suicidal. What I need from you is to make sure that doesn't happen. You're going to show Finn everything this world has to offer, everything he's missed over the last 900 years. You're going to convince him he's better off spending the next 1,000 years with you. Do you know why? She looks confused, as clearly she'd already had intentions of doing what I said. Why? I smile, because if Finn dies, darling, you and every vampire you've ever turned, along with every vampire they've turned, will die with him. It's called a sire line, Sage, and I'm sure there are people over the centuries that you've turned who you still care about. Finn cannot be allowed to continue bemoaning his monstrous existence. It's up to you to show him exactly what joy there is in being immortal. Understood? She nods, clearly shaken by my words, but at the same time I can see her resolve harden. She'll do exactly what I want of her, even going beyond the call of duty now that she knows what's truly at stake. I grin and release her hand before stepping back. Wonderful. Go ahead now, you've more than earned the right to be the one who wakes him. She nods again before pulling the dagger free and tossing it aside, watching Finn's grayed face intently. The revival takes a little under 30 minutes, and as Finn comes out of the coffin gasping, Sage is there with a blood bag. He frowns at the strange thing, but she shows him how to drink from it, and soon his color returns as he looks around the room and his eyes fall on me. He looks absolutely astonished. Vali? It's been 100 years, where have you been? Even as he says this, he continues to take in the room he's in, the clothes we're wearing, his brow furrows in confusion. What are you both wearing? Where are we? Sage clearly has no idea how to tell him, so I step up to the plate and rip the band-aid off full throttle. Finn, you've been daggered for 900 years. Finn looks incredulous at this information. 900 years? Daggered? What the hell are you talking about, Vali? I sigh and bend down to pick up the white oak silver dagger off the floor, holding it up for him to see even as I begin to explain. The 5 that you lot believed you were tricking back in the 12th century were in fact aware of what you were. They slid these daggers into the hearts of each of you to temporarily kill you, only to find they did not work on Klaus. He slaughtered the lot of them and woke everyone but you. He has spent the last 1,000 years daggering and undaggering our siblings at his own whim, but he's left you dead all this time. Finn is up and out of the coffin in a flash. Where is he? I will kill that bastard. I grin at the display of emotion before shaking my head and spreading my arms wide. I'm sorry, brother, but I've beaten you to it. Finn stops at that, blinking for a moment before his brow furrows, his anger completely drained by my strange statement. Finn had been speaking metaphorically, but now I'd admitted to doing what should have been impossible. You've killed Niklaus? How is that possible? We burnt the white oak tree to ash. I grin and beckon for him to follow. He does so, and Sage does as well as we return to the room with Elijah's repurposed coffin in it. I undo the padlock and open the coffin easily, showing Niklaus in all his daggered glory. Finn is astonished. How is this possible if you just said the daggers do not affect him? I smile. I had centuries of time on my hands, Finn. I made one that did work on him, using the resources at my disposal. I close the coffin up and put the padlock on it before turning to Finn and placing my hands on his shoulders, locking gazes with him. I promise you this, brother. For his crime against you, Nick will spend at least 1,000 years dead in that box. After that, it will be your choice whether we wake him or not. Finn looks at me for several long moments before nodding slowly, a fitting punishment. I grin and clap him on the shoulder. Wonderful. Now I believe you have someone who has waited 900 years for you to get reacquainted with. Best not to keep a lady waiting longer than you already have, yes. With that, he turned back to Sage and a wide smile slowly grew across his face as he stepped towards her. I slipped from the room to give them privacy, knowing that Sage would do as I'd told her to, and distract Finn for the next century at the very least. I was quite pleased with myself as I made my way to the room Rebecca and Cole had been transported to, entering it to find everyone up and awake as well as focused on me as soon as I opened the door. I grinned. Ah, littlest brother and littlest sister. It has been a while, hasn't it? What has Elijah been able to cover so far? Elijah speaks up at this. I've told them of your true parentage and how despite that, you've taken Niklaus down and sided with us over him. I also told them what happened with Michael. I smile at that. Ah, wonderful, just the basics then. Well, I'd show you his body, but I'm at least 40% sure that Finn and Sage are currently revitalizing their relationship in there. Possibly on the floor or against the wall, or maybe against the coffin. I smile wistfully and Rebecca wrinkles her nose in disgust. Are you really fantasizing about our brother and his peasant lover having sex, Vali? I grin, more Sage than Finn, but yes. Cole lets out a guffaw at that, laughing so hard he's almost bending over before straightening and composing himself after several moments. Gods, it would seem we've traded the overbearing brother for the perverted one. I just continue to grin, clearly unrepentant. Rebecca is frowning and more than willing to change the subject. Cole raises a good point. What happens now? Have we traded Klaus for you? Will you be the one who watches over us and decides when we need a dagger in the heart for a few decades? Instead of answering, I look to Elijah, who holds up Cole and Rebecca's daggers. I take them from him and turn to my younger siblings, watching as they don't quite tense up, but they do grow a bit more wary. Flipping the daggers over so I'm holding the blades, I hold out the hilt to each of them. Slowly they take it, looking at me with confused eyes. I just smile. From now on, you're the masters of your own fate. What you do with those daggers, I care not. Toss them into sea as I gave Klaus a chance to use them on each other, I still will not care. Being a full hybrid, silver daggers such as those do not concern me. Slowly they nod and I watch as they tuck the daggers away before continuing with my pre-planned spiel. That said, I have something to offer to each of you, including you, Elijah. You may call these offerings whatever you wish, but please consider them gifts with no strings attached. Turning to Rebecca, I smile. First, little sister. I am offering you a ride on one of my private jets, a one-way trip to New Orleans. Rebecca looks a bit stricken by that, and I see pain flash across her face as she replies, "Why would I want that? That city holds nothing but bad memories and heartbreak for me now." I grin a wide, toothy grin as I proceed to drop my bombshell on her, because Rebecca, Marcel Gerald has been waiting for you to return for over 90 years, and has built a kingdom for himself in that time. All that he needs at this point is a queen. Rebecca is floored, actually stumbling back and placing her hand on her own coffin for support. He's alive? He survived the fire. I nod, he did. Ravia did as well, and together they've rebuilt New Orleans from the ashes of Michael's tyranny. Marcel is waiting for you, Rebecca, and Klaus can't stop you anymore. There are tears in Rebecca's eyes now, and I have to refrain from rolling my eyes at her even as she suddenly blurs into me, hugging me and crying into my jacket. I manage to peel her off eventually and hand her a card. This will give you access to a plane, as well as access to one of my bank accounts. A driver will be waiting for you downstairs. Go wild, little sister, and then go to New Orleans. She takes the card from me slowly and nods. Before she leaves the room in a flash, I grin and turn to my brothers, finally rolling my eyes. She was a little emotional, wasn't she? Cole snickers while Elijah frowns in disapproval and replies, "You say you have gifts for each of us. I can only imagine what you might have for Cole and I after that display." I grin at that. Well, now you're certainly eager, Elijah. We'll start with you then, save the best for last. I wink at Cole and he grins in response at the combination compliment/insult. Turning to Elijah, I raise an eyebrow. Now then, brother, can you guess at what I have that you may want? Elijah's brow furrows and he instantly drops to one of our more recent conversations. Are you offering me Katerina, brother? I chuckle and shake my head. I can see where you'd come to that conclusion, Elijah, but no. Katerina is a copy of what you truly want, isn't she? Elijah grows more and more confused as I draw things out, before finally I say it. Tadia. His face immediately blanks at that. Tadia is dead, Vali. She has been for 1,000 years. Mother killed her and used her death to bind the curse to Klaus after you left. I sigh and spread my hands wide. This, Elijah, is my deepest shame, my greatest regret. Mother did not kill Tadia. When I left the family behind, I took Tadia with me. The blood mother used to bind Klaus and I was what was left over from the ritual that turned us all into vampires in the first place. Elijah is on me in an instant, hands grabbing my jacket as he slams me into a wall. I let him do so as there's quite literally nothing he can actually do to me at this point. It's the angriest I've ever seen him, even as tears well in his eyes. It was you? You took her from me? Why would you do this? I sigh and place my hands on either side of Elijah's head, resting my forehead to his. I assure you, brother, I had the best of intentions, though that does not excuse my actions. We both know exactly how hard it was to control our bloodlust when we first turned. You have 1,000 years of experience now with a vampire's heightened emotions, Elijah. What would you have done if Tadia had accidentally cut herself around you? Had exposed her blood to your senses? Elijah blinked at that, taken aback. Are you trying to tell me you took Tadia from me so I would not kill her? His tone is incredulous, and I can't do anything but shrug my shoulders. That was part of it. I wish to spare you the torment of killing your own beloved, but at the same time I did not enjoy the way you and Klaus fought over her. I wish to spare your bond with him as well. If either of you had killed her by accident, I feared that that bond would be broken. Elijah releases me and steps away, shaking his head. He can't even look at me with how distraught he is. Cole watches on seemingly unconcerned as I step away from the wall and straighten my jacket. I understand if you cannot forgive me, Elijah, but you will still want what I have for you. Elijah finally turns to me as a light goes on, and he finally looks past his anger to realize how this conversation began. Tadia still lives? You turned her? How did you even figure out how to do so that early on? I shrug sheepishly. I discovered purely by accident our blood's healing properties. After I found that out, I began to try to use Tadia to gain control over my own bloodlust by drinking from her multiple times a day, and then forcing her to drink my own blood to heal. I pause before shaking my head. Unfortunately, she injured herself as I speculated earlier. I could no more control myself than you would have been able to, and she died. Fortunately, she died with my blood in her system and woke up immortal. Tadia does still live, Elijah, and I have her location and a private jet waiting to take you there if you want it. Elijah is clearly torn between being angry with me and accepting what I offer. Eventually he settles for a combination of both, speaking through gritted teeth. Fine. I accept your offer. I nod and retrieve a burner phone from my pocket, dialing up a number I know by heart and letting it ring. Only a moment passes before Lexi picks it up. Why, yes. Hello, Lexi darling, it's me. Do you have eyes on your mentor? And not physically, not right now, B, but I know where she is. I found the fortress she's holed herself up in. She's in Madrid. I can give you the address. Will you be coming soon? I can easily hear the desperation in her voice. She's still holding out hope that I'm being honest and will let her go once her appointed task is done. I chuckle. Oh no, I won't be coming at all, Lexi. I'm sending my brother Elijah to you. He's the one who will meet with Tadia. I'm washing my hands of the whole thing. Lexi swallows thickly. What does that mean for me? I walk over to a stone-faced Elijah as I answer her. That will be up to my brother. If he says so, you may consider yourself released from my compulsion once you direct him to Tadia. I believe your chances are good on that front, Lexi. Elijah has always been the honorable one. I hold the phone and a card identical to Rebecca's out to him, and Elijah takes both before leaving Cole and I alone in the room. I turn to Cole and let the look of contrition fall from my face, grinning wickedly. So, chances of him forgiving me in the next century? Cole chuckles at that, knowing our family above all older brother? Rather high, I'd say. Might even be forgiven in the next decade given how many times Elijah forgave Nick over the last 1,000 years. But enough about them. I'm curious now, Vali. I have no epic true love for you to pull out of a hat, so you can't possibly shock me like you did with Rebecca and Elijah. What gift do you have to offer me, your little brother? Instead of a straight answer, I beckon for him to follow. It's better if I show you, I think. As we walked out of the room, I couldn't help myself and added, Tell me, Cole, what do you know of the first immortal, Silas? Chapter 36. Cole froze right outside the door as soon as I said the name, eyes growing wide and face paling as he immediately jumped to the worst conclusion. Vali, you didn't? I can't help grinning as he trails off, so terrified of the idea of Silas that he can't even ask the question for fear of an answer. I put that fear to rest by shaking my head. No, I didn't. Silas is dealt with, Cole. Buried and gone, and I share in your desire to keep it that way, brother. I place a hand on his shoulder and look into his eyes. Out of all of our siblings, Cole, it is you who I find myself identifying with the most. That's why I want to show you more than the others will ever know exists, and it's why I saved you for last. Now come and see what I have for you. As we descended into the depths of the mansion, which had more basement levels than it had above ground floors, Cole responded, I remember your doll in New Orleans offering me untold magical knowledge on your behalf. Is that what you're talking about now? I won't lie, it sounds better than what you offered any of our other siblings, but after you name-dropped Silas I can't help but be disappointed if that's all there is. I grin. Oh, the archive is always open to you, little brother, but no, it's not what I wish to offer you. I'd like to think I'm a bit better at pinpointing your greatest desires than that. We reach the basement floor I'm heading for and begin moving onto the floor, which is rather busy activity-wise, vampires and witches working together in unison. I begin to lead Cole through the crowded room to the next when I stop, frowning as I notice a female vampire tied to a chair, being tortured by one of my vampires. She has stakes pinning both of her hands to the chair she's tied to, and it's clear she's in serious pain as I walk over, curiosity piqued. Cole follows with a raised eyebrow, easily recognizing this as a detour. I stop the interrogator as he prepares to drive another stake into her and smile. Hello there. You know who I am, of course. Who is this? The vampire immediately turns his full attention to me, bowing slightly in deference. Master, this one is an intruder. She tried to sneak down here a week ago. We think she's a traveler spy, sir, and they sent her because they thought we wouldn't notice an extra vampire. She didn't even make it past security. I smile at that, looking at the woman, even as she stares about with weary defiance, her jaw clenched shut. And does this spy have a name? Her interrogator shook his head. She hasn't given us anything yet, sir, but a little bit more time and she'll break. I smile. Well, now you have an hour. I have a prior obligation to my brother here, but once that's done I'll come back and deal with this one myself. No killing her off until then, all right? The vampire thug nods in understanding, grim determination across his face. As I turn to continue walking towards my original goal and Cole falls into step beside me, I can't help grin as I hear the interrogator speak to his prisoner. You might as well talk now. You really don't want the master to deal with you personally. Cole finds it amusing as well based off his snickering even as we come into a new room with a large sarcophagus in the center and archivists scurrying around it. Cole frowns as he takes it in before looking at me. What is this? I grin wickedly. Tell me what you know of the other side, Cole. Cole blinks at the tangent but answers, it's supernatural hell. Witches have an easier time with it, able to communicate with each other and even communicate with living witches, but vampires and werewolves supposedly can't. Why? I move to the sarcophagus and open it, revealing Amara to my little brother, because the other side is an inherent part in Silas' story, dear brother. The hell on earth he's prophesied to unleash is the other side. The reason he wants to do so is because of this woman. Cole looks upon Amara's stone-like face. 2,000 years of desiccation leaves her looking more like a statue than a corpse. Another doppelganger? How many of these things are there? I laugh at that. Sometimes it seems there are too many, Cole, but no. This is Amara, the second immortal, and she's the reason the doppelgangers exist in the first place. You see, Cole, 2,000 years ago, Silas was just a powerful witch, part of a group known as the Travelers. He wished to live forever and convinced his fiancée to help him create an elixir for them to drink on their wedding day.
Hey there, novel lovers. I know it's not the usual thing, but if you enjoy what you're hearing, please like and subscribe. Okay, shameless plug over. Now, let's get back to the listening.
I chuckle, and then he promptly stole that elixir for himself and Amara, his true love. His fiancée found out, of course, and being that she was a powerful witch in her own right, she had the capacity to take revenge. So she took Amara and desiccated her, before using her to create and anchor the other side to our reality. Then she convinced Silas she'd killed Amara and locked him away with the cure. I shrug my shoulders. She hoped that he would take the cure and die, so that he would be forced to spend eternity on the other side with her. He's chosen not to so far, and that's why witches fear his return. I've made sure that his return won't ever happen, Cole, but we still have Amara to deal with, the anchor to the other side. Cole frowns as he takes in the female immortal. I don't mind the impromptu history lesson much, but why tell me all this? Because, Cole, this is part of what I'm offering you. I want to remove the anchor and destroy the other side without bringing it here to our world. I want those already on the other side to move on to their true afterlife, and I want you to help me complete this task. Cole furrows his brow. That's a rather tall order. Why does the other side need be destroyed if you've taken care of Silas? Why do you seek to wage war with those already dead? I shake my head. Silas is dealt with, that I'm sure of. Most of the living beings who would seek him out are dealt with as well. But as you said, dead witches still have a hold on the living world. Given enough time, the dead will try to find ways to come back themselves and raise Silas for their own agenda. I would prefer we stop them before then. Cole nods slowly at that, agreed. But then, this sounds like a solely magical endeavor. In that department I have always been sorely lacking, so how do you wish for me to help? I grin at that. Well now, that's where your gift finally comes in, brother. I whistle sharply, and all 7 of the archivists who had before been working in the room stopped what they were doing and came to stand before us. All of them were male and all of them had similar looks and a similar build to Cole. With all 8 of them standing together now, it was almost uncanny. Cole frowns at their appearance. Vali, I hope this is some sort of a joke. I'm not nearly as vain and self-centered as you're making me out to be, and if they're for my pleasure, I assure you that I am solely into women. I chuckle, I'm sure, little brother. Do not worry, I have plenty of female witches who would jump at the chance to get in bed with the great Lord Cole. I may have bragged about you a bit too much. But no, these young men have a different purpose, one I think you'll enjoy. With a gesture, all of them turn around and expose their upper backs, showing off neat lines of holes. I grin and look to Cole. Do you recognize this? Cole frowns. They've been prepared for body possession. Brother. I grin as he trails off. Yes, brother. For you. My witches have long since perfected the act of body jumping. I'm not inclined to do it myself, but I always knew you might enjoy the chance to experience magic again one day. These 7 young men have pledged through magical oaths to serve you until the day they die. 1 for each day of the week so that you don't wear them out too quickly. The archivists turn back around at my say-so even as Cole stares at them. Why would they agree to this? I smile and nod to one of them, and he steps forward to address Cole. The pursuit of knowledge is all any of us want, Lord Cole. Under your tutelage we are sure to discover magics never even heard of. Sacrificing some of our time so that you may experience magic again is the least any of us can do in exchange for your guidance and mentorship. Cole looks absolutely floored, and it's completely obvious how starved for respect and admiration he is as he swallows thickly. Of course I already knew that, just as I'd known exactly what to give Elijah and Rebecca. He turns to me slowly and grins wider than I've ever seen from him. You were right, Vali, you did save the best for last. I clasp a hand on his shoulder. I want you to understand that this gift comes with no strings attached, brother. You will always have access to the magical knowledge at my disposal, and you will always have access to these 7 so long as they live, as well as replacements. There's a waiting list of volunteer. Know that my request of you concerning helping me destroy the other side is just that, a request. Your gifts are not dependent on your acceptance of this task. Cole stares at me for several long moments before nodding slowly. I understand. But I'll still do it, if nothing else, as a way to learn more of the magic centered around it. I promise you, Vali, the other side will be destroyed and Silas' threat will finally be dealt with. You've given me all the tools I need to do it. I grin and pull him into a hug, startling him somewhat severely. I end it only a second later, holding him at arm's length and smiling. Excellent. I'll leave you to it, Cole. Your new assistants will show you how to transfer your consciousness to one of them. I have a spy to interrogate now. We'll talk again soon, brother. He gives me one last nod and I leave the room at a casual pace. Cole will either succeed or fail, but truly it matters not. His new little group is one of 5 that is currently looking for a way to destroy the other side, and they are in fact the smallest of those groups. They have an edge in that I've given them Amara, but at the end of the day, so long as the other side is unanchored and gone, I'll be happy. XX scene breaks X. I have a smile on my face as I make my way back into the larger room and walk over to where the torturer is still at work trying to break our little spy. Once more I stop him and he turns to face me. I raise an eyebrow. Find anything out yet? He grimaces and presses his lips together firmly as he shakes his head. It's clear he's afraid of punishment, but I just chuckle, patting him on the back as I take his place in front of the tied-up vampire. Her head is hanging down now, and she's clearly lost a lot of strength given the amount of blood her tormentor has bled out of her. I reach down and grasp her chin, pulling her head up so she's forced to look into my eyes. I shake my head, keeping my eyes on her even as I speak to the tense interrogator. There's no need to be ashamed. I wouldn't have expected you to manage anything from this one. She has fire to her, just like her mother. The woman's eyes immediately open wide as she stares at me in shock, and I grin wickedly, showing off my pearly whites. Isn't that right, Nadia Petrova? She looks so confused and her vow of silence finally ends as she answers me. How? I just chuckle even as I step forward, place my other hand on the top of her head, and twist sharply in a move that breaks her neck and leaves her unconscious. Tearing away her restraints, I pick her up easily and sling her over my shoulder as I look at the vampire interrogator, whose eyes are rather wide by this point as well. My turn. I make my way back upstairs and find a bedroom in short order to plop Nadia in. Leaving her laying on the bed, I zip away to grab a blood bag and arrive back just in time to find her waking up. I toss the blood bag into her lap and stand there as she drinks from it greedily. As soon as she's done, she's off the bed away from me. Unfortunately, the room is windowless and I stand between her and the doors. I raise an eyebrow at her but make no move to attack. She seems to be torn between fashioning a stake to use against me and asking me what I know of Katerina. Eventually she deflates a bit and chooses the latter. How do you know who I am? How do you know my mother? I grin. I'm not sure you're in the position to be asking the questions, but if you answer mine, I'll answer yours. To answer your first question, I've known who you are for quite a long time, Nadia. I am heavily invested in the doppelganger bloodline. Now I'm curious to know who you think I am. She frowns but slowly accepts the little game I'm choosing to play with her. I assume you're the enemy. If you knew who I was already, why were your people in the dark? That guy was beating on me for hours every day for a week. I blink at that. I can practically hear the capital E in enemy, because some things are need to know, Nadia. What is the significance behind naming me the enemy? She shrugs. The enemy is what the travelers call the mysterious shadow organization that's been hunting them down for the last several centuries. It's the reason that so few travelers remain at this point, and all they've been able to figure out is that whoever's behind it somehow has vampires and witches working together. Given everything I've seen in this place and given that the travelers sent me in the first place to try to get back some sort of sarcophagus, I assume that this is that shadow organization and you're in charge of it, or at least highly place. She frowns as she asks her question after that long speech. Why are you invested in the doppelganger bloodline? I take in her answer, considering that for a long moment before grinning. Well, they're right, I am the enemy. And you're also right about me being in charge, the one all the way at the top. I like that title too, the enemy. I'm going to keep that one. She swallows thickly at that. Noticing that I haven't answered her question, she begins to tense up. Why would you just tell me that? What if I got away and told the travelers? I grin at that, and by the way she tenses further, I know I must be pulling off evil smirk really well right now. Well, first, you aren't going to be leaving this room. Second, who's really left to tell? At this point the travelers barely exist. The last group of any real size was the ones protecting the sarcophagus, and they're all dead now. If I had to guess, you were sent here by one traveler and one alone. Gregor, yes? As I correctly name her boyfriend, Nadia makes an attempt at escaping, moving in a blur of speed towards the door, only for me to grab her by the hair and slam her into a nearby wall, pushing her up against it with my body even as I pull her head back with one hand and run the other hand down her side to rest on her hip. Nadia, you shouldn't have done that. She snarls and struggles against me, but finds such efforts fruitless and eventually stops, putting a brave face on and resting her cheek against the wall for a moment as she speaks. If you're going to kill me, just do it. I won't tell you anything else. I can't help but laugh at that. Oh, if only you knew how many times I've heard that one, darling. Spinning her around, I initiate compulsion as soon as her eyes meet mine. You will stop fighting me, you will stop trying to escape. You will do whatever I say. I release her and she just stands there, leaning against the wall for support, her eyes wide. You're an original. I snort at that. Darling, I'm the master himself. I'm the smart original. She swallows convulsively. I thought the master was a myth. That just causes me to grin. We're all myths, love. Believe me when I say that I am the master. Though I suppose the enemy has its own charm to it. Nadia just stares at me. What are you going to do to me now? I ponder for several long moments before pulling out my phone and dialing up a number. Katerina picks up instantly. Yes, master? I grin as I look at Nadia. Hello, Katerina. Where are you right now, love? Katerina pauses for a long moment before speaking in a small voice. Chicago. Perfect. I'm standing here and I'm in a good mood now that I've dealt with my siblings. I'm feeling incredibly magnanimous. So I've got your daughter here and I'm going to give her to you. You two can reconnect or whatever while I deal with one last bit of family business. Just make sure she stays out of my hair or I'll be forced to kill her, all right? Katerina's response is less than eloquent. What? I sigh. Katerina, keep up please. The daughter that was taken from you in the late 1500s. The one you looked for after becoming a vampire but were never able to find. The one who got herself turned into a vampire to continue searching for you for the past 500 years. That one. Come and do some mother-daughter bonding, Katerina. It's been 500 years. I hang up without another word, knowing that Katerina will eventually get her act together and approach the manor we're currently in. Nadia looks a combination of tearful and hopeful, having latched onto a specific piece of what I just said. She looked for me? I roll my eyes and don't deign to answer that, pointing at Nadia even as I walk towards the door. Stay. You can leave with Katerina and Katerina alone. No more working with travelers. Oh, and when you get the chance, let someone know where Gregor is so we can deal with him, all right? I'm out of the room before she can protest the fact that I've just ordered her to give her boyfriend up for death. She'll do what I say because of the compulsion, and that's all that matters. I've got something more important to deal with now anyways. As I walk down the hall towards an elevator that will take me to another part of the complex entirely, I let a slow grin spread across my face. It's time to speak with my mother. Chapter 37. As I entered the dimly lit room, it was to find everything already prepared. Archivists stood around the edges of the room, and in the middle sat Klaus' final coffin, illuminated by candles. I knew what was inside it already, of course, the perfectly preserved body of my mother put in such a state by Iona 1,000 years previous. I smile down at the coffin as I step up to it, running my hands over its surface before looking to the archivist in charge. Is everything prepared? The cloaked figure nods once and my smile grows wider. Wonderful. My hands move off of the top of the coffin down to the latches, and ever so slowly I lift them up, opening the coffin and revealing my mother's perfectly preserved body. With the coffin fully opened, Esther's eyes begin to flutter open, as the magic needed to unseal the coffin would also pull her from the other side and bring her back to the land of the living. I smile as she blinks rapidly, bringing her hands up to stare at them, breathing for the first time in 1,000 years. Then she notices me standing over her and almost imperceptibly flinches at the sight of me. She covers it up with a smile as she sits herself up. Vali. Ever so slowly she reaches for me, her hands coming to rest on the sides of my face. My baby boy. I continue to smile, even as I bring my own hand up to rest on her forearm, pretending to luxuriate in her embrace even as my other hand comes up and snaps a single manacle onto her wrist. She instantly pulls back, eyes going wide as she stares at the enchanted magic nullifying manacle and then back at me. Vali, what have you done? I laugh. Come mother, you know what I've done. You've been watching over your children for 1,000 years, haven't you? You've seen everything, every single kill, every single horrifying act. You know our crimes in more detail than anyone still living. Her mouth opens and closes but no sound comes out, and she tries to pull away from me further. I won't allow it though, my grip on her wrists tightening as I pull her from the coffin and let her fall into a heap on the ground below. I stand over her as she looks up at me with fear in her eyes and watch as she tries to plead with me. Vali, I love you, I love my children. No matter what you've done, I've forgiven you and the others. I will always forgive you. I'm your mother. I sigh and kneel beside her, running a hand through her hair. I know, mother. I apologize for the rough welcome, but with Michael doing his level best to kill Niklaus and I suppose I'm a little jumpy. You must be thirsty, please mother, drink some water. I hold up an opaque container, genial smile fixed firmly in place as she slowly takes it from me, and I show her how to undo the cap. She gets one swallow down before choking and spewing the red liquid all over the ground, coating her dress and the floor in blood as I've moved slightly out of the blast radius. My genial smile morphs into a wickedly one as she looks at me, her eyes wide. Why? I sigh and take the bottle of my blood from her unresisting fingers, handing it off to an archivist and turning back to Esther. You should know that already, mother. Let's talk about your plan to kill all of your children, shall we? Esther's flinch is even more pronounced this time, her eyes shifty and unable to meet my own as she stutters out. I have no idea what you're talking about. She does finally raise her eyes to meet mine as she finishes that little lie, beseeching me, begging me. Please, Vali, don't do this. Stop this madness. In an instant I'm kneeling beside her again and holding her head in my hands, my intent obvious. I could snap her neck in an instant. Esther freezes up, tears welling in her eyes. Vali, please. I smile at her. Tell me now, mother. Tell me how you plan to kill all of us. Finally she stops and speaks the truth, barely moving in my deadly threatening grip. I was going to connect you all to one another and turn one of you back to human, so that I could end you all at once. It needs to be done, Vali. Vampirism is a blight on nature. I made a mistake when I turned you all 1,000 years ago, and it's up to me to undo it. Please, you must help me fix this. I chuckle darkly, and the noise causes her to flinch again as I look upon her. That's going to be rather difficult, mother. You see, I've just finished spreading my siblings across the world, so getting them all together for a connecting spell is going to be a little difficult. And then there's the other thing. I trail off, my eyes leaving hers to glance to the side, and against her better judgment she asks, Other thing? I bring my gaze back around and look her in the eye. Well, that's obvious, isn't it? With a twist, I break her neck right there and let her lifeless corpse fall to the ground. Standing up and brushing my hands on my jacket, I finish what I was saying, speaking down at her body in a casual, happy tone that belied my actions. You no longer have access to magic. I spend one more moment looking at her before grinning and glancing at the cloaked witches circling the room. How was that? That felt pretty good. Real over-the-top dramatic. One of the archivists speaks up in a calm, subservient tone. Very well done, Master. It was quite moving, if you'll permit me to say so. I chuckle. I shall permit it. And everything was recorded with no difficulties. There's a nod from a different archivist. Yes, Master, no problems there. Excellent. You're going to want to use that footage in the documentary. Bloody fantastic piece of acting, that. It's just unfortunate that so much history happened before the development of recording equipment. Ah well, what can you do? I hold out a hand. Blood bag, please. A moment later, someone plops one into my waiting palm and I crouch beside my mother again, bringing her up so that her head and shoulders are resting in my lap. I stroke her hair gently, waiting patiently for what comes next. In no time at all, she's startling in my arms, coming back to life. Well, not quite back to life, she's transitioning after all. Before Esther can fully comprehend what's happening, I shove the opened blood bag into her mouth, and she instinctively drinks, completing the transition and draining the entire bag in seconds. A moment later, her eyes go wide and she's up out of my grasp in a blur of vampire speed, stopping several feet away and looking at me with such a betrayed look on her face I have to stop myself from laughing. I settle for grinning instead. Hello again, Mother. I think it was time for you to finally join your children in immortality. She's a combination of fear, rage, and depression as she looks at me through teary eyes. How could you do this to me, Vali? Your own mother? I can't help it, I finally laugh out loud. I calm down a moment later and gesture at her. It was incredibly easy, I just followed your example. You should be thanking me, Mother. The other side will be destroyed quite soon. I brought you back before that happened, instead of leaving you to be sucked away with it. Her eyes widen even further. Destroyed? How is that possible? I grin wickedly. Well, you see, Mother, I recently acquired the anchor that keeps the other side connected to our world. The pathway through which all supernatural deaths flow. Considering the amount of magical talent I have on my side, breaking it now that I have all the pieces is going to be the easy part. My grin slips from my face and I take a menacing step towards her. I still haven't heard a thank you from you. Instead of answering that, she goes for the clear entrance to the room, blurring over in a hope of escaping, I assumed, though what she intended didn't matter as she rebounded hard off of the magical barrier keeping her here. Slamming into the invisible wall, she fell to the ground with a moan of pain. I walked over casually and crouched down. That was ill-advised, Mother. Her desire for self-preservation has clearly left her as she looks up at me and snarls. You have lost the right to call me that. You are no son of mine, you are nothing but a monster. I laugh and grab her by the throat, pulling her up onto her feet, and then off the floor completely, looking up at her as her feet kick uselessly against me. That really is an excellent example of the pot calling the kettle black. But very well, Esther, you are no longer my mother. You are nothing but another vampire. Do you know what I do with vampires? She's gurgling now as my grip on her throat is cutting off her ability to speak, so I continue on as if she'd asked, grinning all the while. I compel them. Bringing her down to eye level, I lock my gaze with hers and begin the compulsion. Here's how things are going to go. You will follow every order I give you. You will not seek a way to regain your mortality or your magic. You will not plot against me or my siblings, you will not attempt to hurt any of us, physically, mentally, spiritually, whatever. You will not seek a way to undo this compulsion. I release her and she stumbles back, eyes wide as the compulsion takes effect. She falls to her hands and knees, staying there for a moment before speaking. What happens now? I shrug casually as I walk over to the coffin and slam it closed. To you? Who cares? As you said, I'm not your son anymore and you are not my mother. That said, I've stopped you from trying to kill my siblings, so I suspect they would be very cross with me if they were to find out I was abusing you or keeping you locked up. That said, I flashed over to her and held out a card exactly like the one I'd given to both Rebecca and Elijah. This will give you access to a small amount of my vast resources. Small in this case, meaning that you will be easily set for the next 1,000 years. There is someone upstairs waiting for you to help you acclimate to the new world you find yourself in. Though I imagine given your voyeurism, you're much more prepared to exist in the 21st century than my siblings. She takes the card from me slowly. Why would you give me this? I smile, because it costs me nearly nothing and it gets you out of my way. You're no longer a concern, Esther. And when you inevitably meet each of your children, you will have a choice. You will either tell them how you plan to kill them for the abominations they were, leaving yourself at their mercy, or you will extol my virtues, you will keep a smile on your face as you talk about your beloved son Vali, the one who put so much effort into bringing you back to our family. I watch her eyes widen as she realizes the order I've given her, even as I finish it up. That's all. Those are the two choices you have when you first see my brothers and sister. We both know the one you'll pick. I look forward to hearing about your praises, Esther. Run along now, I have more important things to deal with than a baby vampire. She turns around and walks through the doorway that was just a little while ago blocked with magic, disappearing into the elevator. I let out a low sigh as I follow and take a different elevator. Now that that's dealt with, I think I want to see how Katerina and Nadia are getting along. XX scene breaks X. When I finally found Katerina and Nadia, they were in a small cafe connecting quite easily with one another. I plop down in an empty chair at their table and invite myself into their conversation with an easy grin. Hello darlings, how are you two doing? Katerina is of course pleased to see me, but Nadia actually looks appraising of me instead of the angry that I expect. She speaks up before Katerina can. My mother has been trying to convince me to have sex with you. Preferably with her there as well. I blink at that blunt admission and look to Katerina with a raised eyebrow. She blushes, but doesn't deny it, so I look back to Nadia. And how open to this threesome she proposes do you find yourself? She swallows thickly. She's been very insistent on your abilities. I won't lie, I'm more than a little curious at this point, what exactly you've done to her. I chuckle at that, once more looking at Katerina as I answer. Well now, showing you that would take 120 long years, but giving you a taste won't take long at all. If you're interested. Nadia pauses for a long moment in consideration before nodding and stating it outright. I'm interested. I grin and drop $100 bill on the table as I stand, my two female companions standing as well. Shall we? In under a minute all three of us are back at the manor in an empty bedroom. Katerina is quick to try to jump me and tear my clothing off, but I just laugh, catching her and throwing her to the bed. Oh no, love, this is between me and your daughter for the moment. Deal with your own clothing and pleasure yourself while you watch us. Katerina pouts but does as she's told. I'm already turning to Nadia, who I find is entirely naked, standing completely unashamed as she stares at me with undisguised interest. Flashing over to her, I catch her chin and look into her eyes. First thing to learn, darling, compulsion isn't just about control. It can be for pleasure as well. That said, I compel her. Let's start you with 3 times your usual sensitivity and go from there. As it takes effect, her body flushes slightly and I run my hands over her naked flesh much to her pleasure, my mouth capturing hers and my tongue warring with her tongue as she melts slightly against me. Soon, her hands are working at my belt and she begins to undress me, pulling my shirt over my head and fishing my cock out of my pants before falling to her knees and licking up and down it. I grin down at her and rest a hand on her head as she dutifully takes my prick into her mouth, sucking up and down its length. Eventually, though, I pull her off of me and push her towards the bed and towards her masturbating mother. I grin as I walk up, both women looking at me as if to ask what happens next. I gesture at Katerina. I'm going to be fucking your daughter soon, Katerina. Use your tongue to get her ready, won't you? Nadia opens her mouth at this, perhaps to protest, but Katerina is too used to following her orders, and before Nadia can react she's pinned underneath her naked mother, who quickly slides down her body and pries her legs apart, before diving into her incredibly sensitive honeypot. Nadia's protests die before they can ever be spoken, her mouth instead forming an O as her eyes widen at the pleasure her mother's tongue is inflicting on her. It only takes a few moments for her to suddenly spasm, her body racked with a powerful orgasm. I grin and move to her side, bending over her and locking eyes with her once more. Let's try 4 times your normal sensitivity now. Katerina continued her assault on Nadia's slit as I'd ordered, and Nadia was hit by a string of orgasms to follow her first, the pleasure growing more and more intense as we went. Moving from Nadia's side, I finally got onto the bed with the 2 beautiful women, placing myself behind Katerina and lifting her hips up before thrusting my hard length into her sopping wet cunt. She moaned even as she licked, and those moans turned into screams that clearly had a delightfully pleasurable effect on Nadia as I began to thrust harder and faster into Katarina's welcoming passage. Things continued like this for hours as all three of us traded places and positions. I fucked Nadia while she ate out her mother at least once. I fucked both of them as they made out, one on top of the other. I watched them fuck each other, and then I enjoyed the two of them fighting over my cock with their mouths. Somewhere along the way I brought Nadia up to the 5 times sensitivity Katarina was at, and left her there. By the end of things, all three of us were covered in the juices of our fun romp, and poor Katarina was passed out on the bed. I lay back as Nadia climbed onto my cock, riding me cowgirl, slowly sliding up and down at her own pace as I just watched her, smiling. It would seem the daughter has more stamina than the mother in this case. Nadia gasps and smiles down at me. Well, I had proper motivation to outlast my mother, didn't I? I raise an eyebrow at that, even as I'm more than a little mesmerized by the way her hips move in a circular motion as she rides me. Oh? Wanted to get me all to yourself from the beginning, did you? She nods, biting her lower lip as she leans back and places a hand on the bed to support herself, while her other hand comes up to fondle her own breast. All to myself. So that I could do this. The hand I assumed was going back to support herself comes up with a makeshift stake in hand, and I have only a moment to wonder when the fuck she had time to make it, before it comes plunging down towards my chest and my heart. I catch it, of course. She's 500 years too young to even think about being faster than me, and grabbing her wrist as the point of the stake digs slightly into my exposed skin is child's play as I stare up at her with all humor gone from my face. She doesn't give up though, pushing with all her considerable might against my grip, straining with every ounce of vampire strength she possesses. So I stop resisting, letting the point slide into my heart as I let out a pained growl in response to the piercing wood. The menacing growl is one Katarina knows well, and she wakes with a start only to find her daughter leaned over me with a stake in hand buried in my heart. Her eyes go wide even as Nadia begins to realize I'm not going gray like she expects. Now Nadia tries to flee, releasing the stake and attempting to pull away, but my hand is not on the stake, it's on her wrist, and she finds my grip to be crushing as I pull her closer, my other hand coming up to grab her by the throat and spin us around, pinning her to the bed. She's frozen in fear as I hold her down, the wood stake still sticking out of my chest between us. Now darling, whatever did you think that was going to do? Nadia shivers. You were supposed to die temporarily, and that would break the compulsions on my mother and me. I nod slowly. A good plan if you were trying to kill a normal original. I lean back, keeping my hand around her throat in place as the other comes up and pulls the stake out of my chest. Unfortunately for you, darling, I'm invincible. Katarina is at my side now, clutching my arm. Master, please. Please forgive her. She didn't know any better, please. Don't kill her. I take a moment to glance between Katarina and the stake before smiling and tossing the stake hard enough that it pierces the wall above Nadia's head. She flinches and I release her throat and move off the bed, jovial tone back as I wag a finger at Nadia. You get one freebie, darling, and only because I'm a sucker for beautiful women begging me. Try that again and I'll rip your head from your body. As I get my pants and shirt on, I look to Katarina. I think it's time you take a vacation, Katarina. You and Nadia need to get out of my hair, and I mean that. You're going to avoid being in the same city as me for, let's say, a few years. Katarina actually looks lost at the idea of that, and I can't help grinning. It's not you, babe, it's me. I just think we need some time apart. 120 years has gotten Katarina used to my humor enough to recognize when I'm lightening the mood from murderous to amusing. She chokes out some laughter through tears and nods. Yes, master, I understand. Clapping my hands together, I smile. Wonderful. Tata ladies. With that, I leave the room. I have to go find something expendable to kill. Under my calm, smiling exterior, I was actually more than a little angry. I was fully enraged. But I had a habit of sparing beautiful women for their indiscretions. I also had a habit of punishing others for their crimes. Perhaps that traveler Nadia had been with Gregor was probably either already captured or being hunted down now. If he wasn't found yet, I'd find him myself. I grinned at the thought of personally tearing his heart out of his body. Chapter 38, Rebecca and Elijah. New Orleans. It was fight night at the abattoir, and Marcel watched from above the courtyard, leaning against a railing as his nightwalkers fought for the right to earn daylight rings. Between one moment and the next, Ravia arrived beside him, remaining silent as she joined him in watching the young vampires below fighting. Marcel smiles, not taking his eyes off of the courtyard even as he speaks. It's been a while, Ravia. You don't usually come out these days for anything less than a supernatural war. Should I be worried? Ravia makes a hem sound in her throat before replying, perhaps. My master just called. I am to warn you that his sister is on her way to New Orleans. Marcel furrows his brow. Rebecca? It's been 90 years since she left. Why would she come back now? Ravia shakes her head. The master has asked that she be allowed to explain that herself, but he wishes to clarify that it's not her fault. He notes that in nearly a century you have never found a female companion to replace his sister, and hopes that you will do him a favor by rekindling your relationship with Lady Rebecca a chance. Marcel can't help but scoff. And what does Klaus have to say about that? Ravia pauses for a long moment. Lord Klaus does not have a say in the matter, but I am not allowed to tell you more. My master wishes for you to ask Lady Rebecca for more information on that matter. Marcel runs a hand over his face, sighing explosively but nodding. Very well. I'll hear her out. When will she arrive? Ravia smiles, pleased at her task's completion. Lady Rebecca will arrive tomorrow morning at the private airstrip you've been trying to find more info on for the few years. It belongs to my master. Marcel blinks at that, finally turning away from the vampires fighting below to give Ravia his full attention. Hang on, what? That place is his? Not even the humans could figure out what was going on there. The best I could find was that the place belonged to Mr. Masters. Marcel lets out a groan as he finishes that sentence and buries his face in his hands. Ravia, sometimes I hate your master. Ravia just smiles placidly. My master provokes that reaction in many people. So long as you do not act on that hate, we will be fine. Marcel just chuckles, well used to Ravia's brand of humor by now. XX scene breaks X. Marcel is of course waiting at the private airstrip the next morning when Rebecca's plane lands. Ravia is at his side, as her presence was necessary to get him into the highly secure airstrip. The door of the plane opens and the stairs fold down. A moment later Rebecca, dressed in the newest fashion, is walking down those stairs and onto the black tarmac. Her eyes widen as she sees Marcel, and a wide smile spreads across her face as she blurs across the airstrip over to him and launches herself into his arms, gushing a bit as she does so. Marcel, it's so good to see you. She punctuates this statement with an eager kiss which Marcel happily returns even as he wraps his arms around her. When they break apart though, his brow is furrowed. It's good to see you too, Rebecca, but it's been 90 years. Where have you been? Rebecca's smile drops from her face and she glances at Ravia with a growing frown. No one told you? Where do you think I was, Marcel? Klaus put me in a box only a few short years after New Orleans burned. I didn't even know you had survived until yesterday when Vali woke us all. Marcel blinked at that before cupping her face in his hands. I had no idea. You know I would have come for you if I'd known. Where is Klaus now? Will he come after you now that Vali has freed you? Rebecca smiles and shakes her head. No, Vali has taken care of him. He made a dagger that works on Klaus, and he'll stay daggered until Vali changes his mind. There's nothing left that can keep us apart. Marcel smiles wide at that and goes in for another kiss. He has many more questions and many concerns whirling around in his head given what he's learned, but they aren't the sort of things to be sought right now. Right now he will do as Ravia's master asked and give Rebecca and his relationship another chance. That won't stop him from looking into this supposed daggering of Klaus. He's a leader of a city. He isn't the sort of person to just step back and accept how things are without knowing all the details. He won't let Klaus come back and take what he's built here, no matter what. XX scene breaks X. Madrid, Spain. Elijah looked at the large stone building Lexi had directed him to with a slight frown. There was armed security all over and whoever lived there was quite paranoid. Though given what Lexi had been willing to tell him of Tadia to secure her freedom, he supposed the paranoia might be warranted. Still, he had nothing to hide, and so he walked straight up to the front gate and smiled at the door guard. I am here to see Tadia. You will let me in. This statement resulted in an assault rifle immediately being pointed at his breast. He just raises an eyebrow, not the least bit perturbed. Do you really think that will do anything to me? This gets a response from the guard finally, wooden bullets, so yeah. Luckily Elijah is already moving, because the area he was occupying is full of those wooden bullets a moment later, even as Elijah arrives behind the guard and disarms him easily before breaking his neck. Once again stepping closer to the entrance, he straightens his suit even as a group of 5 more guards rushes out, their own weapons drawn and focused on him. Elijah lets a small smile play across his face. "Before you force me to kill all of you, let your mistress know that Elijah Mikaelson is here to see her. I would hate to start off our reunion by shedding the blood of her subordinates." The armed security is tense, but the clear leader does eventually take Elijah's advice, placing a finger against his ear and speaking quietly, letting someone somewhere know of Elijah's presence. A moment passes and the leader shakes his head. "No, he's alone, nobody with him." A moment after that, the leader looks at Elijah, repeats a question. "Should we be worried about any more of your family showing up?" Elijah sighs. "If she's worried about Vali, I can assure you that he stayed in America. It's just me, and all I wish is a chance to speak with her." The guard nods and repeats those words back. After a long pause, he gestures, and those surrounding Elijah lower their weapons and clear a path. Elijah walks through them and into the large building, the guard captain leading him down a corridor that led into a large hall, within which Elijah could see what could only be Tadia sitting upon a throne like a queen. As Elijah walked into what felt to him like a throne room he hadn't seen in centuries, he noted several vampires in the alcoves to either side of him, some watching him and some just pointed in his general direction. The latter wore blindfolds. As he focused his attention on Tadia, he noted that she wore a blindfold as well, and the skin that was visible around the edge of the blindfold was burned and scarred horrifically. Tadia still manages to give off a regal air, her beauty barely diminished by the horrifying blindfold even as she sat forward and focused her attention on Elijah without actually looking at him. Elijah came to a stop at the bottom of the steps, looking up at her with abject sadness. "Tadia, what have you done to yourself?" Tadia scoffs at that, smiling ever so slightly at the sound of his voice even as she berates him, her own voice strong and powerful. "I did what I had to, Elijah. My early life was defined by my usefulness to people. I decided early on in my immortality that I would never be used again." Elijah grimaces at that, "But the blindfold is so unnecessary. You could just as easily ingest a small amount of vervain each meal and it would keep any original from compelling you." Tadia laughs at that, bringing a hand up to cover her mouth as she smiles at Elijah, unable to help herself. "As always, Elijah, your honor tends to make you a little naive. Of course I take vervain with my meals. All of my true followers do so. I wear this blindfold for one reason and one reason only." Here her tone loses its humor and she speaks in a hiss. "Vali." Elijah frowns but catches on quickly. "What has he compelled you to do, Tadia?" Tadia responds by sighing explosively and leaning back in her throne. "You truly do not know. I suppose I forgive your ignorance then, Elijah. To put it simply, I am not allowed to plot against your family, and if I ever lay eyes on Vali again, I will be forced to present myself to him and do whatever he tells me to do. A safety precaution, I'm sure, to keep me from ever seeking revenge, but not a position I will ever let myself be in." Elijah's eyes narrow angrily at that as he processes her words. A moment later, he takes his phone from his pocket and pulls up his contacts before calling Vali. Vali answers after only 3 rings. "Elijah? I didn't expect you to call so soon. Was there a problem with Lexi?" Elijah doesn't bother answering that, instead immediately biting out a command. "Release the compulsions you have on Tadia right now, Vali." There's a slight pause before Vala's voice comes back over the phone with a wicked grin clearly attached to the tone. "Oh? That would mean Tadia is listening in right now. Hello, my dear, so good to hear from you again. I heard from Lexi that you've even gotten yourself a moniker in the time we've been apart. The Blind Queen, it certainly has a certain gravity to it. Absolutely lovely to converse." The voice causes Tadia to shiver, but before she can respond, Elijah snarls, "Vali. Compulsions now." Vali responds with an overdramatic sigh, "Always ruining my fun, big brother. Fine. Tadia, you may consider all previous compulsions void. You may plot against any original you want as much as you want. You do not have to present yourself to me for orders if you ever lay eyes on me. Feel free to do whatever you want, Tadia, I don't rightly care anymore. Just keep in mind which one of us is invincible and which one of us dies from her heart being torn from her chest, all right?" Vali hangs up before Elijah can do it for him, and Elijah can only look sternly at the phone for several long moments before Tadia speaks up and he pockets it. "What has he done with Alexia, Elijah?" Elijah looks up to find Tadia's brow furrowed, and even with the blindfold it was clear she was worried for the vampire. He quickly puts her fears to rest. From what I understand, he captured her just a little while ago and compelled her to track you down for him. Instead of using that information for himself, he gave it to me, and when I arrived here I released Lexi from the compulsions put on her and sent her back to her lover. She's fine. Tadia nods slowly, letting out a relieved sigh before frowning again. He called himself invincible. What has he managed now, Elijah? Elijah sighs but sees no harm in revealing Vala's accomplishments. His brother certainly hadn't been shy about just telling everyone around him. He apparently killed our father in the 20s. Michael was the only one who had a weapon that could kill an original, and assuming that Vali used it to kill Michael, it would have burned up with my father's body. Vali has also broken the curse that our mother put on Klaus and him 1,000 years ago. I can see why he's feeling invincible. Tadia's eyes go wide. He's broken the curse? She immediately turns to a nearby attendant and barks out, "Get messages to any of our vampires in the Western Hemisphere. They need to evacuate now. Tell them that there will be a place for them here in Spain. They just have to get here. Tell them that our worst fears have come to pass and the Americas will soon be overrun." Elijah frowns in confusion at that. "Tadia, what are you talking of? Overrun? Overrun by what?" Tadia looks down at Elijah for a long moment before slowly shaking her head. "I'm not sure I can so easily forgive your ignorance this time, Elijah. Your oversight is frankly appalling. Tell me, Elijah, what is the main reason Niklaus has worked to remove the curse for the last 1,000 years? Elijah thinks on that. His first inclination is to claim Klaus just wanted to be whole again. But something else strikes at his memory instead, something his brother had mentioned time and time again. He wanted to be able to make more hybrids. He wanted to be able to create an army. Tadia smiles and nods, slowly leaning forward in her chair further and further as she reveals what she knows. And Vali has spent the last 1,000 years cultivating pack after pack of werewolf followers. He started with talks of alliances, but as the centuries went on, the werewolves who originally allied with him became subservient to him instead, believing in his legend and becoming his followers in all but name. Those thousands, possibly tens of thousands werewolves are either now hybrids or will be very soon. Vali has the army Niklaus always wanted, and that means he's already won. Elijah blinks. Won? Won what? Tadia slumps back defeated, her voice barely a whisper. Everything. XX scene breaks X. This is how it feels to be Tadia, the blind queen right now. For the majority of your life you've had relative peace and relative control at the cost of your eyes. Your actions and decisions have been heavily influenced by the events of your mortal life and the last moments Vala spent with you, but you've always stayed one step ahead of him. Until now he didn't even know if you still lived. Back at the end of that first century you had agonized over whether you still wished death or not, had been almost ready to go through with suicide when you'd run into a young pitiable Native American girl named Audrey, who turned out to be a vampire much like yourself. More than that, you find out she's another of Vala's victims, only he's gone a step further in her compulsion and kept her from ever revealing the existence of vampires to humans, which has forced her to feed on animals alone, leaving her weaker. You take pity on her and take her in, and in this your life finds purpose. Over the centuries you have gained and lost much. Though Audrey eventually died to a persistent vampire hunter, more vampires followed and your purpose remained. You taught your followers, and in doing so, showed as many of them as possible how to avoid the originals and avoid the loss of control. Forced to do so, you have ran for 1,000 years, but at least in that you've been successful. In your millennium-long existence, nobody else has used you like Esther or Vala did. You have been nobody's tool. Yet as you sit there with Elijah only a few feet away, you realize you have been used once more. Without ever even getting close to you, Vali has used you again as a tool against his older brother. Elijah has come to find his long-lost love, and Vala's message is clear. So long as you choose Elijah, so long as you allow him to stay by your side and be your protector, your lover, your everything, Vali will stay away. He will leave you alone. You will be his instrument to ensure Elijah's happiness, or he will come for you and nothing you or your people do will stop him or his hybrids. This is the choice you are now faced with. An eternity of love with Elijah or an eternity of hate with Vali. With those options, there's no question which one is right, is there? XX scene breaks X. Slowly, Tadia rises from her throne and reaches up, pulling the vervain blindfold from her face with a hiss and tossing it to the side. As she walks down the steps towards Elijah, her eyes heal rapidly, and by the time they are within inches of each other, she is gazing into Elijah's eyes with a small smile. Elijah smiles back, bringing a hand up to softly brush her cheek with the back of his hand. Tadia catches it and kisses his knuckles gently before speaking. I have truly missed you, Elijah. Out of all of your family, it was my separation from you that hurt my heart the most. Elijah looks down at her as he responds, in all my years I have never found someone that makes me feel the way you do, Tadia. I have mourned you for so long that it felt like my heart was rejuvenated when I found you still lived. Leaning down, he kisses her deeply and Tadia returns it with enthusiasm, her arms coming up to wrap around his neck as he takes her into his embrace. Chapter 39. New Orleans, 2011. I arrived in New Orleans only a few weeks before Klaus would have been drawn to the city, having let the events of the harvest play out as they did in the original timeline. The only difference was Rebecca was now here and would be in on keeping Davina a secret from me. I didn't bother testing her loyalties just yet though, I was here for another matter entirely. I looked down at the gold Rolex on my wrist and smile, running my fingers over it. On the underside are etched runes, the watch being another Camilla artifact. I've never desired to possess a witch's body like Cole, never wanted to make myself that vulnerable just for something I can easily experience with Camilla. But then Camilla is what I was using now to hide my presence in New Orleans. Sometimes it was better to be anonymous, and it was even better if witches couldn't tell you were a vampire. The watch on my wrist changed my features to the extent that no one who knew me would recognize me, and it made it so that if any magical juju was used on me, I would register as a witch. Underneath the enchantment I was still very much an immortal hybrid, but this way I could assess the situation in New Orleans before making my first moves. Grinning wickedly, I finally step into Rousseau's for the first time. Jane Devereaux was tending the bar and Sophie Devereaux could be seen in the kitchen, cooking up the gumbo that was mentioned but never actually seen in the show. I made my way through the place's patrons and came up to the bar, smiling as Jane and took a moment to tend to me. She smiled back at me, placing a glass she'd been cleaning to the side. Hi there, what can I do for you? It's my first time in New Orleans, but a friend recommended this place to me. Something about a delicious gumbo? Figured if I was in the area might as well try it. I receive a nod and a smile in response as Jane takes my order down and continues along. Soon enough I have my meal. I try it slowly, savoring the first bite and considering the taste. It wasn't bad, so I finished the bowl, but honestly I wasn't sure what all the hubbub was about. When Jane came back around and asked how I'd enjoyed it, I smiled and lied to her face. It was marvelous, everything that was described to me. Is there a chance I might be able to pay my compliments to the chef? Jane smiles and nods. I'll see if she's busy. I watch as she moves to the open kitchen and see her mention me to Sophie. I smile as Sophie looks up and she gives a small smile back before getting back to work. I know Sophie's personality. She's a bit of a party girl and she's quick to drown her sorrows with unhealthy amounts of alcohol and men, especially when grieving. So when she walks up to me after her shift, I'm not really surprised. She's got a quirk to her lips like she almost wants to smile as she looks at me. So my gumbo was marvelous, huh? I grin at that, spotting the trip up easily. It was all right, but mostly I was just hoping the compliment would draw you over here so I could flirt with you. Sophie scoffs, but the quirk is growing into a small smile as she enjoys my blatant attentions. You're certainly confident, aren't you? I hope you aren't overestimating yourself, would hate to waste my time. I grin wickedly and wink at her. If you feel the need to test my prowess, do so. It's not arrogance if you really are that good. Sophie grins back, unable to help herself, before her eyes flash to the glass of water in front of me and she lights up, looking back at me. Fine then, drinking contest. I raise an eyebrow at that, my own gaze glancing at my glass of water as I chuckle. Oof, bit of a strategist, aren't you? Already looking for my weak points, love? Still, I'm not one to back down from a challenge. Choose the drink and let's go. She goes behind the counter and makes a beeline for a bottle of tequila, grabbing it off the shelf and expertly pouring us 2 shots. She slides one over to me and I catch it even as she picks it up. With a wink at me, she downs it and I follow suit, both of us finishing at the same time. Sophie slams her shot glass down, but I bring my down carefully, smiling at her. She eyes me for a long moment, realizing that alcohol wasn't as big a weak point as she'd thought. And it really wasn't, I was 1,000 years old after all. Just because I didn't usually partake in alcohol didn't mean I wasn't largely immune to its effects. Sophie takes this as a challenge, grinning at my smile and pouring 4 more shots for us. We both down our drinks one after the other and empty shot glasses once again come down on the bar. Sophie kept pouring and I kept drinking, slowly beginning to fake being drunk as we went through the bottle and then half of another before Sophie was convinced. She looked a bit out of it as she capped the tequila bottle and grinned. All right, I concede, you aren't overestimating yourself. I'm not inclined for us to knock ourselves out tonight. She reaches across the counter and grabs my hand, leering at me like a piece of meat. I've got other ideas for what we can do tonight. Come upstairs with me. I chuckle and lean over. You're a little drunk, sweetheart. She just smiles. So Ryu. I'm not hearing a no here. I shrug, because I'm not saying no. Lead the way. Sophie pulls me around the counter into the back and up a flight of stairs to the apartment above the bar where her and her sister must live. She doesn't even notice my slight pause at the threshold as she drunkenly murmurs "come on" and inadvertently invites me inside. Soon enough we're falling to her bed as our clothes are pulled off in a flurry and our mouths are all over each other. She's less than coordinated but still has enough presence of mind to push me onto my back and take charge. She grins down at me, kissing me even as her hand reaches down and strokes my now revealed cock to its full length and thickness. I kiss her back, hands running up and down her sides and centering on her tight ass as she moans into my mouth. Eventually she moves up, guiding the head of my prick into her waiting lower lips, sighing blissfully as she begins to rock back and forth, rolling her hips in a delightful way. I lay back and let her have her control, her hands resting on my chest and mine resting on her hips as she rides me faster and faster, biting her lower lip. She underestimates my stamina though, and eventually after several orgasms and a half hour she slumps on top of me, panting, eyes half closed as the alcohol catches up with her. I just grin and switch up our positions, letting her fall to her front. I pull her hips up and slide into her from behind, fucking her through 3 more orgasms before I finally reached my own release. Falling onto the bed beside her, I let her curl up against my side and drifted off with her in my arms.
Disclaimer: I don't own this story. If the original author requests its removal, this video will be taken down.
XX scene break sex. I woke up before Sophie the next morning of course and just lay there, luxuriating in the feel of her body against mine, stroking her hair even as she began to wake up. She startled upon realizing she wasn't alone in bed, coming up off me and sitting up as she stared down at me. I responded with a raised eyebrow, not moving from my own place. Sophie groans and rubs her eyes. That was, certainly something. I chuckle. Bit magical, aren't I? Sophie freezes up at that word before smiling shakily. Yes, quite magical. I smile. You were quite magical yourself, darling. Sophie finally groans, not entirely slow on the uptake. You know about witches? I laugh. I'd be a pretty terrible warlock if I didn't. She gapes at that. Wait, you're a warlock? You haven't done any magic since you got into town, have you? I frown, feigning confusion. No spells quite yet, haven't had need to. Why? Sophie is paling. You can't do magic in the quarter. If you do, you'll die. I raise an eyebrow at that. You're going to have to explain that one to me. She sighs and falls back on the bed, but she does begin to explain. There's a vampire that runs the quarter. He knows when spells are cast and he's got hundreds of nightwalkers at his beck and call. You cast any magic, he'll know about it and he'll send his people after you. I smile. Then I won't cast any magic. I appreciate the concern, sweetheart, but we don't even know each other's names at this point. You don't need to worry for me. Sophie frowns as she realizes that I'm right. After a moment, she speaks. My name is Sophie Devereaux. You are? I incline my head in greetings. Vali. Something flashes across her face for a second. Vali, not exactly a common name, is it? I blink at that, now wondering if I'm once again being revealed by someone knowing my name who shouldn't, but I decide to play it off for now. It's the name my mother gave me. Sophie nods at that, seeming to accept it, but a moment later she speaks again. It's just, there's a Vali that could help us. A different Vala from you, of course, he's not a witch. But there is a Vali out there who owes a debt to my family and might be willing to repay it by dealing with our vampire problem. Or he might not, it's a toss-up. She finishes with a groan, lying back. I frown, it's obvious she's talking about me, but I had no memory of owing a debt to the Devereaux. And I really should know, my memory is nigh perfect. I settle for vague. That's a strange coincidence. She chuckles. Don't I know it? It doesn't matter though, in a few days we're going to send a message to him. He'll come hopefully, out of curiosity if nothing else. I raise an eyebrow at that. How do you intend to get a message to him if you don't even know anything besides his name? Sophie smiles grimly, lips pursed together as she replies, magic. A spell will read our intent and get the message to the right Valley if he's still alive. I raise an eyebrow. What about the whole no magic thing? Sophie shrugs. My sister considers the risk worth it, the chance to save our coven. I nod slowly. She sounds like she's willing to sacrifice a lot. Sophie's gaze is shifty, and I know it's because neither her nor Jane care about the coven so much as they care about bringing Monique back. Yeah. We both are. Sighing, I get up off the bed and begin getting dressed. I think that it's time I get out of town, love. No matter how much fun last night was, there's just way too much drama for a warlock around here. Sophie snorts, probably a good idea. But it was fun. I grin as I put on my jacket and give her a wink, before leaving her behind and heading down the stairs and out of the bar. It seems that in a week's time I'll be back as my true self in Klaus' place, if Jane Ann's spell works, that is. Even if it doesn't, I think I'll come around. I really want to know more about this dead I.O. the Devereaux. Chapter 40. Mystic Falls, a week later. The spell worked in spectacular fashion, finding me easily as I was eating breakfast. In front of my eyes, a scrunched-up piece of paper assembled itself in the air with a burst of fire. Someone had burned up the message while casting the spell, and that led to the reverse happening before me. I caught the ball of paper before it could fall on my omelet and brought it in, eyebrow raised as I unraveled it and read the message contained within. Vali. Charlotte's descendants send our regards and beg you for an audience in the French Quarter of New Orleans. If you are willing to hear us out, seek Jane and Devereaux. I blink at the message and set it aside, going back to my omelet. Huh. Charlotte. I really should have guessed that. Shrugging, I finish my breakfast off with a nice full glass of delicious blood and stand up. It would seem I have a visit to make. Grabbing my jacket and shedding my Rolex, I head back to the streets of New Orleans. Once again the master that certain people in the city will recognize, once again a hybrid to any supernatural beings with the senses to sniff me out. It takes me a couple days to arrive in the city as the sun begins to set, and when I do I have a decision to make. I could go straight to the Devereaux, but part of me enjoys following the same path as Klaus in the original timeline, for at least a little while. Entering the bar I know I can find Marcel and his people at. I make it 3 steps in before Ravia is in front of me, eyes wide. Master? I smile at her, leaning down and kissing her forehead. Hello love, it's good to see you again. She melts into my arms before looking up at me and smiling back. I've done everything you've asked of me, master. I chuckle, even as Marcel approaches with Rebecca not far behind. I expected nothing less, my dear. I knew I could count on you. Marcel speaks up as he draws closer, brow furrowed by wide smile on his face. Who's your friend, Ravia? Never seen you get so excited over anyone before. Rebecca ruins the grand reveal as she steps up a moment later, a mixture of happy and confused. Vali? What are you doing in New Orleans? Why didn't you call? I just grin as Marcel looks at me with new eyes. Well now, sister, there's something to be said about arriving unannounced once in a while, isn't there? Besides, I wouldn't have bothered showing up without an invitation, but I actually received one. Seems there's a certain witch looking for me. Marcel perks up at that, frowning deeply. And do you know this witch's name? I smile. Indeed I do, a Jane and Devereaux. Marcel grins at that. Yeah, about that. You'll want to come with me. I raise an eyebrow and look at Rebecca to find her just shrugging and smiling tentatively. My sister never has been that good with secrets. Ravia, of course, has been kept in the dark. Davina is only known to Marcel and Rebecca at this point. I follow him out onto the dark streets and watch as his nightwalkers come out of the woodworks in a blatant show of force. Marcel stops only long enough to grab a small branch off of a nearby tree before moving on. As the street fills with baby vampires, I smile as I catch sight of Jane and being pushed through them, her hands tied in front of her as she's led towards Marcel and I. Ravia stands to the side and slightly behind me, ready to carry out any order I care to give, while Rebecca stands with Marcel. Jane Ann is pushed forward to stand before him, and Marcel begins his theatric performance. As he strips the twigs from the springy branch he's carrying, he speaks clearly and loudly, Jane and Devereaux. Everyone give a hand for Jane Ann. The Nightwalkers get into it, catcalling and whistling and cheering in general for several long moments before quieting down. Marcel smiles and repeats her name. Jane and Devereaux, you stand accused of the practice of witchcraft beyond the rules set forth and enforced by me. How do you plead? Jane Ann clenches her jaw defiant in the face of death as she answers, I didn't do anything. Marcel wags a finger in her face. Now that is a lie. You know it, I know it, and you hate that I know it. He chuckles. It drives you witches crazy that I'm aware of your every move. That you can't do magic in this town without getting caught. He becomes solemn as he looks at Jane and, why don't we just cut to the chase, shall we? Tell me why you invited my friend here to town. With that he gestures at me and Jane Ann's eyes follow, widening comically. Why, you're Vali? You're friends? I smile as I step up beside Marcel. I am he, a pleasure to meet you, my dear. As for Marcel and I, we've only just met for the first time, but I can easily see us becoming friends in short order. After all, it was with my help that he built all of this. I gesture around us and Jane and collapses to her knees, the defiance and stubbornness gone from her, hopelessness taking over as their apparent last resort is revealed to be at least partially behind their plight to begin with. I bask in that abject despair for a moment before placing a hand on Marcel's shoulder. Marcel, as one ruler to another, I must ask you to do me a favor and spare this one. I told her ancestor over 800 years ago that I would help her descendants as best I could. I'll take responsibility of the Devereaux sisters and make sure they stay out of trouble, if you can do this for me. Marcel raises an eyebrow at that, looking down at Jane and for a long moment before nodding. From one ruler to another, I'll grant you that favor. Just sate my curiosity, what did her ancestor do for you that gained such a favor 800 years down the line? I chuckle. Charlotte was probably the most mercenary which I ever met. In exchange for the small favor of killing her sister and retrieving her dead mother's grimoire, she made me my first 50 daylight rings. They were probably the first of their kind. Though not many would know it, the Devereaux descend from the first which to make it possible for vampires to walk in the sunlight. Jane Ann has looked up again as I describe her ancestors' deeds, and it's clear from the horror on her face that Charlotte's acts had not managed to be recorded through the last 1,000 years like my name had been. Marcel chuckles too, though it sounds a bit forced. How interesting. I grin as I step forward, pulling Jane Ann to her feet. Isn't it? I'll make sure this little witch gets home. We'll have more to talk about tomorrow, Marcel. There are threats to New Orleans that you aren't fully aware of. Marcel frowns but nods slowly, whistling sharply to his nightwalkers to disperse them. Soon enough Jane Ann and I are left alone on the streets. I grab her up bridal style before she can protest and flash through the city, arriving quickly at the back of Rousseau's where a staircase led up to. Letting her down, she steps away from me quickly, taking the stairs 2 at a time, taking her keys out and opening the door to the apartment her and her sister share. I follow as she steps over the threshold and immediately turns around, jaw clenched. You aren't invited inside. I come to a stop at the entrance of the apartment and smile. You should reconsider. After all, I've come to help you complete the harvest and bring back your daughter. Jane Ann can only stare at me with her mouth open as Sophie is attracted by the sound of our voices, stopping right behind her sister. Jane Ann, what are you still doing in town? You were supposed to be gone by now, safe. Marcel will be looking for you. Jane Ann turns to her sister and grimaces. He won't be. Vali here has made sure of that. Sophie blinks and looks past her sister to me, eyes wide. Vali? You came? I grin wickedly. Of course I did, such a lovely message, how could I not? Jane Ann's jaw clenches back up as she looks at me. He's working with Marcel sophomore. He was with him when Marcel's nightwalkers dragged me into a mock trial. Sophie turns betrayed eyes on me, and I can't help rolling my own in response. This whole back and forth is getting ridiculous. I step forward, moving over the threshold of the Devereaux home much to the shock and fear of both sisters as they back away from me, giving me room to step inside the apartment, still smiling. Jane Ann swallows convulsively. I didn't invite you inside. You didn't, that's true. I'm not exactly your normal vampire though. That isn't what I'm here to talk about though. We all want the same thing, to complete the harvest. This distracts the sisters from considering how I could possibly have already had an invite, Sophie frowning and crossing her arms across her chest. How do you know about the harvest? Why would you want to complete it? Smiling, I spread my hands. I'm over 1,000 years old, sweetheart. I know about the harvest because I've had vampires in the area for the last 2. And I want to complete it because I know what happens if it isn't finished. Jane Ann blinks at that. If it isn't completed, the girls' sacrifice don't come back and our entire coven loses our ancestral magic. But why would you care about that? I smile. Well, there is the debt I owe to Charlotte. Letting Monique stay dead and you lose your magic would probably go against the spirit of the promise I made, even if it wasn't a binding oath. But the real reason I'm helping is because that's not all that happens. If the ritual isn't finished, Davina will slowly deteriorate, and as she does so, she will destroy the city around her in the magical backlash. I prefer not to lose New Orleans and everyone in it. My sister enjoys the city too much for me to let it come to pass. Both sisters are speechless at this point, so I turn and walk towards the still open door, stopping in the threshold for only a moment, turning towards the Devereaux sisters and grinning. I implore you both to sit tight and stay out of trouble for just a few days. I'm going to save the day, but you'd ruin my grand heroics if either of you got yourselves killed doing anything foolish. I punctuated that with a wink, and then I was gone, leaving the sisters to their own devices. Hopefully they made the right choice. XX scene breaks X. As soon as his Nightwalkers and Ravia had gone their separate ways, Marcel made a beeline for Kieran's church with Rebecca on his heels. As they blurred through the streets of New Orleans, Rebecca called out, "Marcel? What's the rush?" Marcel growls as they come to a stop in front of the church. "We need to move Davina, maybe get her out of town entirely." I couldn't exactly say no to your brother when he asked so nicely for Jane Ann's life, but now that he has her under his thumb, he'll know all about Davina and the harvest by sunrise. He moves into the church with Rebecca close behind and heads for the small attic room Davina has been staying in, talking as they go. "So we get her out of town now, and then we negotiate with your brother, find out exactly what he's going to want to leave us alone." It's as he finishes saying this that they both come to the door of Davina's room, to find it knocked off its hinges. Marcel rushes inside only to find the room empty and looking like a whirlwind tore through it. Davina's drawings are strewn across the room and there's glass on the floor from the broken window. No, this isn't possible. How could he have known where she was? How could anyone have taken her given her strength? While Marcel is steadily losing it, Rebecca finds a letter. "Marcel, it has your name on it." With a snarl, he snatches it out of her hands and tears it open, reading the letter quickly. "Marcel, as you may have guessed, I have Davina. I'll swing by your compound with her tomorrow after sundown. We'll discuss your options. Until then, please refrain from doing anything stupid. Sincerely, the Master." Marcel growls as he crumples the letter into a fist, before punching that fist through the closest wall in a fit of anger. He turns to Rebecca and points at her. "I can't let this stand, Becca. Your brother has overstepped his bounds in my city. I need to know now, are you with me or are you with him?" Rebecca steps forward, responding instantly, "You, Marcel, always you. But I fear you're underestimating Vali. He's a hybrid like Nick. He can't be killed or brought down by any normal means." Marcel scoffs at that, staring around the torn-up room one more time before snarling and turning to leave. "He's the one underestimating what I'm capable of. Let's see how he deals with 100 Nightwalkers while trying to keep a hold of Davina. He's going to be walking into the biggest trap I've ever made." Chapter 41. New Orleans next day. Davina is of course unconscious when I first see her, brought to a small estate on the edge of the French Quarter that is supposedly owned by a member of the human faction of New Orleans. In reality, that member is one of my people and thus su casa es mi casa. I think that's how that saying goes. I eventually leave her to her sleep, knowing she won't come around until well into the morning. When she does wake up, she's escorted to the dining room where I wait with a large spread of dishes laid out across a table. She shuffles in carefully, clearly wary of her surroundings as her eyes land on me sitting at the head of the large table. I smile. "Davina, a pleasure to finally meet you. Please come sit with me. You must be hungry." Davina makes no move to come closer to me, her entire posture defensive. What have you done to my magic?" I sigh and stand up, walking over to the young teenager slowly. She tenses up and instinctively tries to back away from me, but the hybrid who escorted her here is still right behind her, and she doesn't get far. I stop a foot away and smile at her. "You need not fear me, Davina, I don't mean you harm. And your magic is merely locked away for the moment, by that shackle on your wrist." She looks down to see the shackle where a moment before she hadn't seen anything. While she's distracted with that, I step forward and place a hand on her back, guiding her to a chair and sitting her down in it. Her eyes are wide as she stares at the thick metal bracelet. What? Where did this come from?" I chuckle as I sit back down myself. "It's part of the enchantment, darling. The shackle locks your magic away, and the wearer doesn't know it's there until someone else mentions it to them. Sort of like a perception filter." Davina looks up at that, expression incredulous. "Seriously? A Doctor Who reference?" I chuckle. "We all have our hobbies, love. Now please eat, I know you're hungry. Davina frowns as she looks at the food. How do I know it's not poisoned? I grin at that, grabbing her attention before flashing my game face, eyes flashing gold black and dual set of fangs popping down. Davina draws back, eyes wide as I revert back to a normal face and chuckle. As you can see, Davina, if I wanted to hurt you, I wouldn't resort to poison, I'd just do it. I'll say it again, you have nothing to fear from me. My captive audience shivers in response. What are you? I'm an original hybrid darling, the younger brother of the one who turned your savior Marcel into a vampire so long ago. And you are Davina Claire, young teenage witch and the last harvest girl. You have quite a bit of power flowing through you at the moment. Davina tenses up, her fear hardening into anger and resolve. If that's why you took me, you can forget it. I won't let you use my magic for your gain. If you unshackle me, I'll kill you. I laugh at that. Now see, Davina, that's the sort of thing you don't let me know until after I've removed the shackle. You need to work on the subterfuge, darling. What you should have done is convinced me that you want to help me, and then kill me once I've unshackled you. I lean back in my chair and preempt her next response by speaking again. But the point is moot, sweetheart. I have no desire to use your immense magical power for my own gain. Davina scoffs. And I'm just supposed to believe that? I grin. Believe what you want, Davina, but where do you think I got your shackle? I have hundreds of witches and warlocks if I need magical might. You're worth a good number of them alone, Davina, but I don't really need your help. You have another use entirely. Davina blinks at that, and what's that supposed to be? Why, to piss off Marcel, of course. I know how he reacts when he's calm, collected, and in control. What I want to see is what he does when he feels threatened. We're also testing exactly what he truly cares about. You or his control over the witches. You and I will be going to his compound after sundown, so eat up. You'll want your strength for this. Davina frowns at that but falls silent, and finally begins to fill her plate with food. XX scene breaks X. Davina and I arrived at Marcel's compound an hour after the sun had set. We walked into the courtyard to find Marcel and Rebecca standing there alone and waiting. I made no move to stop Davina as she runs from me into Marcel's arms, instead coming to a stop in the center of the courtyard and smiling placidly. Rebecca is staring at me with clear heartbreak, her loyalties tearing at her, but my eyes are on Marcel and Davina as he looks down at her and asks, "He didn't hurt you, did he?" Davina shakes his head, and no, but he's locked away my magic, I'm powerless. She shows Marcel her shackle and he reaches for it only to have it zap him. He growls with anger and pushes Davina behind him as he finally looks to me. You're really starting to piss me off, Vali. What the fuck is the point of all this? Do you get your kicks out of poking a hornet's nest? I chuckle and shrug my shoulders. Perhaps I do. I wonder, what will you do about it, Queen Bee? This provocation works exactly as intended. Marcel's jaw clenches and a moment later he's whistling sharply. His people come out of the woodworks, a mix of his stronger daywalkers and some of his nightwalkers riff-raff. They form a perimeter around me, a loose circle as they cut off any exit and stare me down. I ignore them, raising an eyebrow at Marcel, smile still in place. Is this it, Marcel? This wouldn't be enough to deal with Niklaus, let alone me. Marcel just smirks knowingly. You're right. He whistles again and the second force of nightwalkers shows up. I'm quickly surrounded by over 100 vampires and my smile morphs into a wide grin. I spread my arms and gesture around at the vampires. This is what I wanted to see, Marcel. This is the proof of your skills as a leader, as a ruler. You command the loyalty, love, and respect of those around you. What will you do with it now? Davina's eyes are widening as she tugs on Marcel's arm and whispers frantically to him. Marcel, he told me he was testing you. Rebecca looks to Davina sharply, but Marcel doesn't take his eyes off me, anger swirling in them as he speaks. Take him. As his vampires charge forward, all I can do is laugh. The first one who gets in range is lucky. My hand snaps out fast and all they suffer is a quickly broken neck. The next is not so lucky as I catch them by the arm, break that, and then thrust my hand straight through their chest and right back out in the blink of an eye, letting them fall to the floor. After that everything is a blur for several minutes, for my opponents at least. I'm faster and stronger by simple virtue of my age. I outclass every single one of these poor schmucks by a wide margin. But I've never been the type to play fair. Even now, with my body practically invincible, with my immortality practically ensure, I was still cheating. As I backflipped over a closing circle of 6 nightwalkers, it was at least partially because of the enchantments on my boots that I had the agility and dexterity to avoid every single one of them. As I knelt down and grabbed one by the ankle, before swinging him like a flail into every vampire who was closing in, it was at least partially because of the strength enchantments enthused through my leather jacket. Everything I wore was magically enhanced by my witches. My outfit was almost a century old by this point. I had once compared it to playing an RPG. All of my stats increased by the enchantments placed on my favorite set of gear. Of course, I'd made that comparison back in the 1940s, leading to blank faces all around me to those I'd said the metaphor to. I was having the time of my life as I laughed and viciously tore through Marcel's army. One of his vampires managed to get a hit with a metal bat on my back, only to find it bouncing off like it had hit armor with no effect. I took the bat from the vampire and used it to hit a home run with his head. This causes a small lull in the combat as everyone stares at the wall that his head went over. Even I wince a bit, looking to Marcel. I hope he wasn't important. Marcel bares his teeth at that and comes at me himself this time, Rebecca on his heels. The rest of his people are still too leery to go in with him, leaving me to face off with my sister and her lover for the time being. It wasn't any more of a fair fight than before. Rebecca comes at me from behind, and I spin around faster than most of the baby vampire's eyes could follow, backhanding her hard enough to send her into some of the vampires waiting in the wings. And then I have Marcel's throat in my tightening grasp. With deliberate force I push him to his knees even as his hands come up to grasp my wrist, trying to break my grip as he grimaced in pain. With my free hand I wagged a finger at those around me who were considering jumping me, grinning as I show off my dual set of fangs. Now nobody make any sudden moves. Would hate to accidentally pop off the king's head. Looking down at Marcel I change my grin to a pleasant smile. Now then Marcel, are more of your people going to die or are you ready to concede? Marcel manages to get the words out in a raspy voice. Fine, you win. New Orleans is yours. I blink at that, feigning confusion as I bring my free hand up to my chest as if mortally offended by that. I don't want your city, Marcel. I'm here to help you save it. As I release his throat, he just looks at me confused. Grinning, I pull him to his feet. But that was fun, wasn't it? We should do it again sometime. It was almost a challenge. I turn away from him before he can formulate a reply, raising my fingers to my lips and releasing a sharp whistle of my own. A moment later, the rooftops around the courtyard are filled with my hybrids, hundreds of my new children encircling what's left of Marcel's forces. I watch Marcel with a keen interest, this being the moment I've been waiting for. His face starts shocked and slightly fearful, before turning incredulous as he realizes that the people I had waiting in the wings would have made any attempt at truly bringing me down entirely fruitless. The incredulity gives way to resignation as he finally understands the truth of Davina's words. I'd baited him out and forced him to act recklessly. Now some of his people were injured, some of his people were dead, and I didn't have a single scratch on me. I regain my pleasant smile from before as I look around at both my hybrids and those of Marcel's vampires who still stand. Well then, you lot can start cleaning up. I'm pretty sure I bit at least a few of these moaning bodies. Those of you with vials of my blood are allowed to heal them. Turning back to Marcel to find him flanked by Rebecca on one side and Davina on the other, I grin. Let's go inside and talk, shall we? Chapter 42. Marcel's anger has mostly bled out of him as we all move into his study. Our little meeting consists of Ravia and I on one side of the room with Marcel, Rebecca, and Davina on the other. As Marcel sits down, his attitude is more sullen than angry by this point, but that's because I actually took some care not to kill any of his day walkers, only ending a few of the night walker riff-raff I knew he didn't care too much about. I sit down as well and Ravia takes up point behind me as I initiate polite conversation. First of all, I apologize, dear sister, for my rough housing. You must know I have no desire to raise my hand against you. Rebecca's eyes are narrowed and her arms are crossed. I'm beginning to realize I don't know anything about you, Vali. Not even Klaus would have been capable of what you just did out there. Did the curse really lock away so much? I smile, it's possible. I've felt more and more powerful ever since the ritual. But we're here to talk about another ritual entirely. You interfered with the harvest, Marcel, and that was not a good idea. If you hadn't kept it secret from Ravia, she could have told you. Marcel's brow furrows. They were going to kill kids, sacrifice those girls. They did manage to sacrifice 3. I wasn't just going to sit back and let it happen. I shrug, and yet if you had, those girls would be alive and the New Orleans witches would be thriving. Instead, they're still dead and you now have 3 paths available to you, Marcel. I like to call them renegade, paragon, and plain stupid. I get confused looks on Marcel, Rebecca, and Davina's faces and let out an exasperated sigh. Oh come on, nobody here has played Mass Effect? Ravia immediately speaks up from behind me. I have master. I roll my eyes. Yes, that's because I told you to. Rebecca shakes her head. What is a Mass Effect? I roll my eyes. Not important. My reference is lost on you uncultured plebs. Let's move on. We'll start with your first option, Marcel, the renegade route. I assume you like your control over the witches, yes? You would love it if their magic just drained away with the harvest incomplete, would you not? He nods and slowly in agreement, recognizing that I'm clearly leading up to some sort of gotcha moment. Which I am as I smile and gesture at Davina. If that is what you want above all else, you will kill Davina right here, right now. Davina draws back at that, her face paling, but before she can say anything, Marcel is on his feet, face angry and teeth bared. No. Never. I smile slowly, glancing at Davina. I told you we'd find out what he cared about more, didn't I, sweetheart? Davina nods shakily and Marcel blinks before falling back into his seat and groaning. Another damn test. Wonderful. I chuckle, only partially. It is the only option that will allow you to keep your stranglehold on the witches in this city. Marcel grits his teeth. And what are options 2 and 3? I smile. Ah yes, the Paragon route. You allow the witches to complete the harvest. They sacrifice Davina's life, finish the ritual, and all 4 girls are brought back to life. The witches will be back on an even playing field with you, though of course greatly diminished in their strength. Marcel shakes his head. Not acceptable. We have no way of knowing if Davina will even come back, let alone the other girls. I won't let them kill her for their gain. I nod, I figured as much. Which brings us to the plain stupid option. You do nothing, continue on as you have been. You use Davina to continue oppressing the witches and wait out the expiration date on the harvest ritual. When it comes, Davina will begin to die from an overload of magical energy, and as she does so, New Orleans will die with her. It will come in 4 stages. First, she'll throw up dirt. The city will experience ever-growing earthquakes. After that, the winds will come, representing air. And then water will express itself in the form of a powerful rainstorm. But after that will come the real killer. Fire. The entire city will burn as Davina's blood boils until she's dead. Davina has been slowly paling as I speak, but Marcel just looks incredulous. And we're supposed to just believe you know what you're talking about? I smile. Well, you should certainly consider doing so. I was here for the first harvest some 600 years ago, and Ravia was here for the second that took place only a few short years before Rebecca arrived on the shores of New Orleans with my brothers. But no, I don't expect you to take my words on faith. I rise to my feet. But in 2 weeks, when the harvest begins to expire and Davina begins to vomit dirt and the earthquakes begin, I expect you to believe me then. Turning, I walk out of the study with Ravia close on my heels before anyone else can comment. I do love making an exit. XX scene breaks X. The next day I stop by Rousseau's, a smile on my lips even as Jane intenses up upon seeing me walking up to the bar. I preempt anything she might say. Hello my dear, I've got such good news. The harvest will be completed, though we'll have to wait until close to the last minute to make things more dramatic and dire. Jane crosses her arms over her chest and works her jaw for several moments before replying. Well, I've got the bad news then. Agnes is dead. I furrow my brow. Who? Jane rubs the bridge of her nose. Our coven's last elder. My blank face prompts her to continue. She's the only one who could have actually completed the harvest. It's over now, we're finished. I laugh at that. Oh, that's why you're upset. Well, not to worry. You or Sophie can consecrate Agnes' remains and then you'll be recognized as an elder of your coven. Now it's Jane Ann's turn to state at me blankly. What? I roll my eyes. Geez, am I really the only one who does his research around here? There's precedent for this sort of thing, darling. If all the elders die, the witch who consecrates the most powerful which remains becomes the new elder. Agnes is your best bet for that. How did she die anyways? Jane seems at a loss for words. See car crash. I have to look into what you're saying, find out if there's any recorded incidents in our lore. If it's true, then we have hope. I smile placidly and lean against the bar as I watch her pass over control of the place to Camille and rush out to find records of what I'm talking about. I know she will, of course. My own information comes from her coven's records. It's only a matter of time before a Devereaux, which is elder of their coven and ready to finish the harvest. XX scene breaks X. In the end, Sophie consecrates Agnes Bones and becomes the coven's newest and most importantly only elder. Sophie always has had more leadership qualities than Jane Ann, and I'm happy with their choice. They prepare things to finish the harvest and we wait out the timeline I gave Marcel and Davina. When Davina begins to vomit dirt and the earthquakes follow soon after, Marcel is forced to finally believe me. I am incredibly humble about it, of course, as I direct him to bring Davina to the graveyard where it all began. I don't tell him I told you so even once. By the time the winds begin to whip through the city at a slowly increasing rate, everyone has arrived and we're prepared to begin. I stand to the side with Marcel and Rebecca to my left and Ravia to my right. We are the only non-witches in attendance, the remains of the coven in a half-circle as far from us as possible yet still around the altar as Sophie Devereaux proceeds over the ceremony. Davina kneels before her and behind Davina the bodies of her fellow harvest girls lie dead. I watch in silence, a slight smile on my face as Sophie goes through the ceremony, eventually coming to the end and holding up the ritual blade as she stares down at Davina and asks, "Do you believe in the harvest?" Davina is shivering violently, but she manages to hold her chin high as she nods shakily and speaks clearly, "I believe." Sophie wastes no more time, the blade comes up and Davina's throat is slit in one smooth motion. She falls back amongst the bodies of her fellow harvest girls as she dies, and moments after that the winds die down as the magic flows out of her lifeless body. In the original timeline, Celeste would have preempted the finish of the ritual and brought back 4 powerful witches in place of the girls. In my timeline I dealt with Celeste hundreds of years before this, and there was no witch left to screw up the harvest. Everyone gathered watches as the 4 girls come back to life in unison, gasping with air and each sitting up quickly. Their loved ones go to each of them, the Devereaux sisters to Monique, and witches I hadn't bothered learning the names of go to the other girls. But Davina has no one, her mother is gone. Marcel moves forward to comfort her, and she melts into his embrace, the closest thing to family she has left. I just grin and reach up to wipe an imaginary tear from my eye. Ah, such a beautiful moment for everyone. Nobody pays me any attention, which is fine by me. I watch the Devereaux fuss over Monique, listening in on their conversation for a moment. Jane Ann has Monique's face in her hands as she looks at her with concern. "I'm so glad to have you back." Monique just smiles. "It's all right, Mom, I'm fine. The ancestors kept us company while we were on the other side. They taught us so much. Charlotte took me under her wing specifically, she had such knowledge that my head is still spinning with it. She's proud of you both." Jane Ann and Sophie exchange a look, having talked about exactly what the ancestor who had met me had done. Sophie speaks up eventually, "That's nice. What exactly is she proud of?" Monique's smile widens as she glances around at the other witches and lowers her voice so that only her mother and aunt can hear her, "And every vampire in the gathering, of course," she applauded your mercenary nature. "How you both ignored how obvious that it was that Vali had Agnes killed so that our family would gain control of the coven." Jane Ann and Sophie exchange another look, eyes wide. Sophie steps back, almost stumbling as Jane Ann attracts Monique's attention away from her aunt and puts on a shaky smile. "All right." Sophie turns away, hand over her mouth, and her wide eyes connect with mine. Coming to a decision, she makes a beeline for me. As soon as she's in range, she brings a hand up to try to slap me, but I am faster by too wide a margin. I catch her wrist and grab the other at the same moment, before bringing her arms up and pulling her close, lowering my voice. "Sophie, darling, there's no need to make a scene. And I'm not going to let you strike me no matter how magical you are, sweetheart." Her brow furrows, confusion replacing her anger for a second. She's halfway through asking, "What dash?" when her eyes widen again and she finally puts it together. "Why you?" I grin me. "Now, Sophie, haven't I done such a good job of repaying my debt to Charlotte, to your family? I saved your sister's life, didn't I? I even made sure your niece was returned to you, after your lack of faith nearly had her lost to you forever. I'm sure you regret telling Marcel about the harvest more than anything, don't you?" Sophie's lips are pressed tightly against together, her eyes wide and her body shaking in my grasp as she understands the true meaning of what I'm saying. I just smile and continue, and now your family is not only safe, but also in a position of power. It's up to you now to lead your coven and make sure that Marcel doesn't reacquire his strange hold on the witches, isn't it? Sophie isn't stupid by far, she nods carefully. Why yes. I smile and turn my grip on her wrists into holding her hands, patting the top of them. Wonderful. I'll always remember our time together fondly. And know that your family can still call on me whenever they have need of me. I release her and she immediately steps back, before turning and practically sprint walking back to Jane Ann and Monique. As I look about, I can tell that the only ones who had heard Sophie and I were Ravia and Rebecca. Marcel could have easily, but he's so focused on Davina that I'm not sure if he did or not. Not that I really care. Rebecca walks over to stand beside me, staring at the happy gathering of witches and speaking lowly. All of this. You. She trails off, causing a wide grin to grow on my face. Yes, I know, dear sister. I tend to get that reaction a lot. But I do think I've overstayed my welcome in New Orleans. I turn towards Rebecca and clasp her by the back of the neck, leaning in and kissing her forehead. It's time for me to be going, Rebecca. I trust one won't need to come back to this city anytime soon. Make sure Marcel knows to avoid attracting my attention again. Oh, and tell him I've dealt with his werewolf problem too. I let her go and step back, grinning. If he's unsure whether something will piss me off or not, have him consult with Ravia here. She knows my will and I continue to have full confidence in her ability to speak for my interests. Turning towards Ravia, I wrap my arm around her waist. Darling Ravia, I'll be leaving the city once night falls. Until then, I'm all yours. As we walk away from the gathering of witches and out of the graveyard altogether, Ravia is gleeful and almost vibrating with excitement. Really, Master? I chuckle and look down at her. Of course, love. Consider it a reward for your hard work. It's been some while since we got to spend quality time together. As we walk away and Ravia focuses her attentions on planning out the rest of our day together, I contemplate what's left for me to do. There are only 2 family members I haven't dealt with yet, 2 loose ends left to tie up. I've long since won by this point. Victory is assured and control of the world is pretty much assured given a century or so more. But winning isn't everything, and dealing with my long-lost sister and Auntie Dahlia will probably prove to be more fun than conquering the world at this point. Chapter 43. Brazil, 2012. Freya came to me, of course. Once she'd awoken, I very quickly found her sniffing around my holdings in Brazil. The first time I saw her, she was wearing a tasteful red dress and peering around. I could tell she was looking for me, so I stepped out for a moment and came back with the Rolex before approaching her as my witch alter ego. I grab her attention easily enough and smile at her as I take her hand in mine and kiss the back of it. And here I thought I knew every beautiful woman at this party. May I have the pleasure of your name? She smiles back, Freya. I don't believe I know who you are either. Should I? I chuckle. Probably not. I'm the man behind the curtain, so to speak. I organized this party for our master. It's why I approached you in the first place, actually. I made the guest list, so I know you aren't on it. She freezes up at that, like a deer in the headlights, and I laugh disarmingly. Not to worry, darling, I'm not looking to kick you out or anything. I just wanted to know more about you. I'm sure you have no ill intentions against the master. Attacking him in the heart of his power, where it all began, that would just be the height of idiocy, wouldn't it? She smiles slightly, very confident in her ability to handle herself. I suppose it would be yes. But you can be assured, I have no desire nor cause to attack your master. I was just hoping to find out more about him. Well now, most knowledge about him is an open secret at this point. Shall we take a walk and you can ask me what you wish to know? Freya's smile grows and she nods, offering me her hand. I would love that. Together we walk from the ballroom to a nearby terrace that overlooks a hedge maze. This place of mine can be compared more to a palace than a mansion, and the grounds surrounding it reflect this opulence. I'm not usually one for flashy, but, who am I kidding, I'm flashy as fuck when I want to be. A small grin runs across my face as I contemplate that, even as Freya looks away from the stunning view to ask me her first question. I suppose first I wanted to ask about his name. The master is his title, of course, but his real name is Vali, yes. I look to her and nod. Indeed, Vali Masters. Bit of a play on his title, of course, but then he was known as the Master long before he took the surname Masters. She frowns slightly at that. Yes, that's another thing. He's an original, isn't he? Why does he not go by Mikaelson like the rest do? I wince at that. Never use that name in front of him, my dear. He shared no blood with Michael, and after killing him, Vali does not exactly identify with his stepfather of 1,000 years ago. Freya nods slowly. Yes, I heard about that. Do you know how that came about? How Michael died? I smile. I do actually, it's become common knowledge now, but I actually knew one of the witches who was there when it happened, so I got a first-hand account. Michael came after our master with the intent to kill him and destroy everything he'd built. By the time they came face to face, Michael had killed a disciple. Vali was not happy. Freya furrows her brow. That explains the why, but not the how. I've read up a little. Michael was known as the Destroyer, the vampire who hunts vampires. And Vali just killed him. I shrug my shoulders. Michael apparently had the weapon that can kill original vampires on his person. Vali used it on him, and that was that. I must say, I'm surprised at your interest in Michael. Did you know him? Freya blinks at that before shaking her head. What? Oh no, how could I? He died long before I was born, didn't he? I suppose the original family and their history fascinates me. It's just a shame that they all lost the ability to have children. I've been waiting for her to bring this up, and I let a grin slowly grow across my face. Oh? It sounds like I have something to show you. She looks confused but lets me take her by the hand and back into the palace. We move through the passages easily enough, eventually arriving in a wing of the palace that is heavily fortified with security. Security that knows what my Rolex means and allow me to pass with Freya unhindered. We find ourselves walking down a hallway with doors on each side, and I stop before one, turning to Freya and grinning. She returns the grin tentatively, speaking in a quiet voice. What is this? Instead of answering her with words, I open the door to let Freya look inside the room. The lights are off, but it's clearly a toddler's room, given the decor and the fact that there is a child asleep in a crib. A moment later I close the door and Freya looks at me with wide eyes. I don't understand. My grin is still on my face as I answer her. That in there is one of Vala's children. Freya's eyes widen. Children? How many does he have? I place my hand on the small of her back as I direct away from the door and towards the exit of this wing of the palace. Oh, dozens by this point. I do believe the master enjoys spawning them. Freya tries to put a smile on her face as she asks the next question she's dreading. Don't suppose they were all sons? I chuckle at that. Of course not, that'd be rather unlikely, wouldn't it? In fact, his first child was a beautiful girl. The one we actually looked in on back there. Freya's eyes go back down the hall to the door we just left, and she's suddenly gripping my arm tightly. I need to speak with Vali now. I could go further with this, but I don't want to risk her working any magic if I prove to be difficult. As she grips my arm, my free hand comes up and clasps a bracelet around her wrist. Freya looks down at it as she releases my arm, stumbling back and trying to pull it off. Wow, what is this? I just grin as I undo my Rolex and pull it off my wrist, revealing my true features. Magic nullification, dear sister. I got the idea from a pair of rune shackles centuries ago, but I've been refining it ever since. At this point I have it down to a science, really. She looks up at me as my appearance changes, her eyes wide. Vali? I chuckle as I step up to her and grab her by the arms, in the flesh. Did you really think you could hide behind anonymity forever? That I wouldn't see you coming a mile away, Freya Mikaelson? Freya looks at me with fear in her eyes now, and I can't help enjoying it, drinking in that fear even as she pleads with me. Vali P, please, you need my help. Dahlia will come for your child. I roll my eyes as I push her into the arms of two of my hybrids. Of course she will come, Freya. She is owed. She will come and she will receive what she deserves. And now I have you for her as well. You see, Freya, I find myself identifying quite well with dear Aunt Dahlia. We're going to get along quite well, better than you and I at least. Freya shakes her head, terror on her face as she's dragged off to a specially prepared room for her. Vali, you can't. Please, Vali, please. I just watch her go, a wide grin on my face. Next up, my dear aunt. XX scene breaks X. Dahlia came shortly after Freya, drawn by the magic that my firstborn was manifesting. She was cautious and careful as she approached, surveying the situation and taking her time. Normally she would possess those around me to play with me and get intel on the situation. Unfortunately for her, she found every mind in the palace grounds closed to her possession. All she could do was glean surface thoughts from the distance she was at. With this avenue of spying closed to her, she chose force instead, coming towards my palace with all the fury of 1,000 years of magical power concentrated into a thunderous storm above our heads. I met her at the bottom of the palace steps with a smile on my face and no one at my side. She stopped a few feet from me, eyeing me up and down. Vali Mikaelson. I am owed. I smile grimly. I would prefer you not use that name, Dahlia. I am not born of Michael's seed. Dahlia narrows her eyes. You've closed your mind to me. I shake my head. Darling aunt, I've closed my mind to everyone. I guarded my mind against psychics long before I learned of your existence. Don't take it personally, please. As for what you are owed, my children await us inside. I step aside and gesture up the steps for her to follow me, but she doesn't move, frowning slightly. Children? The deal is only for the firstborn nephew. I grin at her and shrug. Yes, well, the firstborn awaits you, but I do have over 30 sons and daughters now. If you wish to take more than one, I won't mind. I know that they'll get the best possible lessons on how to control their magic from you. Now Dahlia finally deigns to step up to where I'm standing, turning towards me. You're under a bit of a misconception, nephew. I'm not taking anyone anywhere. You have quite the home here, there will be more than enough room for me in it. I grin as I lead her inside. I was hoping you might say that, dear aunt. Now, I don't feel like I'm bribing you when I say that I have the largest collection of magical grimoires in the Western Hemisphere for you to go through, once you've met your newest tribute. Dahlia raises an eyebrow at that as she follows me through the palace and smirks slightly. I will be interested to see if there is any witchcraft within them that can even potentially challenge my own. I chuckle at that as I lead her into a large room full of playing toddlers and several nannies. All of my children are between the ages of 1 and 3 now, but only the first has manifested serious magic. Her presence in the middle of the room is made obvious by the floating blocks spinning around her in a fast and complicated pattern. Dahlia is speechless at the sight of her, a surprisingly soft smile crossing her face as she takes in the sight of her. I chuckle and call out, drawing the attention of everyone in the room, Miranda darling, come here. The blocks fall to the floor as my firstborn daughter smiles wide and walks over to me, carefully weaving her way through the others. She stops before me and curtsies as she's been taught, before looking curiously at Dahlia. Daddy, who is this? I smile. This, my dear, is Aunt Dahlia. We've talked about her many times before, haven't we? Miranda's eyes are wider now as she nods and looks at Dahlia before curtsying again. It's good to finally meet you, Aunt Dahlia. Dahlia is staring at her with her brow furrowed, small smile still in place but faltering slightly. She's known about me her whole life. You've prepared her for this day since she was old enough to walk and talk. I must confess, nephew, I did believe you to be foolishly looking to trap me, but it begs the question though, how did you come to know of me? I grin wider as I beckon Miranda along and lead her and Dahlia from the room. That brings you to my next gift. To be blunt, I compelled the truth of you out of Esther after bringing her back from the dead and turning her into a vampire. Stepping up to another set of doors, I open them and expose the room's contents. There are attendants lining the walls, but the true prizes are in the center of the room, forced into kneeling positions and properly restrained at their wrists and ankles. The gags in their mouths keep both Freya and Esther from voicing their dismay as we enter the room and they lay eyes on Dahlia. Dahlia's brow clears up and her smile widens exponentially as she takes in the 2 gifts. Oh Vali, you're quickly earning a spot as my favorite nephew. So this is where Freya ran off to. I did wonder if she would try to warn you, if she could feel the pull of little Miranda as I could. I leave Miranda with an attendant as Dahlia steps forward, stepping forward as well even as she looks down at Freya. Poor Freya, I can see it all in your mind. You snuck in, you got caught, you tried to appeal to a hatred of me that Vala did not have. Only now you know what it is like to be betrayed by family. I assure you your suffering will be exquisite. Next she turns to Esther, her smile only growing bigger. As for you dear sis. She stops suddenly and her tone becomes confused as she begins to turn towards me. Vali, why does Esther not remember telling you owed? Her sentence is cut off as she finishes turning around and I slide the knife right into her heart. Her eyes widen as she looks between me and the knife in her chest, stumbling back from me. You, why you? I step towards her, a malicious smile growing on my own face as she begins to turn to ash, disintegrating as she struggles against her death. Freya and Esther are forced to fall to their sides as she finally falls back right between them, her body exploding into a dust pile as it hits the ground. Reaching down, I pull the knife from the center of what remains of my dear aunt and hold it up with a smile, Esther and Freya looking at me with even wider eyes than they'd given Dahlia. The sacred soil of her homeland, the ashes of her Viking oppressors, courtesy of our dearly departed father, and the blood of Esther, the one person she loves most. I grin as I crouch before Freya, twirling the dagger around even as I continue. Did I get that right, big sister? It would seem I did. I reach down and pull the gag free of Freya's mouth. She shivers violently and licks her lips before speaking. Why, you were never going to give her your daughter. I chuckle as I reach behind her and cut the bindings on her wrists and ankles, letting her stand. An attendant does the same for Esther, who immediately backs away from the two children she's sure hate her the most. My attention is on Freya though as I shake my head. I was never going to give her anything, dear sister. I don't share well. Freya's eyes flicker over my shoulder towards where Miranda had been, only to find her gone along with the attendant I'd passed her off to. What will you tell her? I chuckle and shake my head. Freya, she's only 3 years old. I'll tell her Auntie Dahlia couldn't stay long, but left her star pupil Annie Freya behind to take her place. Tell me, sister, how would you like to bind yourself to Miranda and the other children with true magical talent, so that you no longer have to sleep for 100 years just to be awake for one? Freya's eyes are perpetually wide at this point as she looks back at me. Why you would allow that? I just smile and bring a hand up to Freya's face, running my thumb across her cheek. You're my sister Freya? Of course I would. To punctuate that statement, I reach down and casually unclasp the bracelet that's been restricting her magic, tossing it aside. Freya finally smiles, tears of joy forming at the corners of her eyes as she allows herself to melt into my arms, sobbing in pure relief at finally being free of Dahlia's evil. I look over her head at the pile of ash on the ground behind her that is all that remains of my aunt, her tormentor, and my smile grows wicked. For now, Freya would see me as her savior. One day though, she would realize, like the rest of my siblings were realizing, that I just didn't appreciate anyone encroaching on my playthings. At the end of the day, there was only room for one big bad evil guy on my world. And that spot was already occupied by me. Chapter 44. Unknown time, unknown location. In a dark room, a cloaked figure stepped forward and carefully opened a coffin. Reaching in, they abruptly ripped away the chains that bound the desiccated figure within, and carefully placed a tube at the body's lips, through which a rich red liquid slowly began to move. It took hours, but eventually the body in the coffin moved, grabbing hold of the tube at first and drinking greedily from it before pushing it away and sitting up. In a flash he was out of the coffin and pushing the cloaked figure against the nearby wall, a hand at their throat. As Klaus bared his dual sets of fangs, his eyes turned gold-black as he stared into the eyes of the woman who'd woke him up. "Who are you?" All he got in response was choking, as his grip had crushed her trachea, and he growled as he released her throat, letting her fall to the ground. A few moments later she stood and bowed low in deference to him, speaking in a raspy tone. "Lord Klaus, I am your humble servant." Klaus narrows his eyes, but the respect and awe in her tone placates him ever so slightly. "Are you now? Then tell me, how did you come to find me?" The girl keeps her eyes down as she responds dutifully. "We did not find you, my lord, we were given your coffin." Klaus' eyes stay narrowed as he frowns, looking back to realize he had indeed just come out of a coffin. He turns back to the servant prostrating herself before him. "Who gave you my coffin?" "The master, my lord." In an instant Klaus' hand is once again around the girl's throat as he snarls at the mention of his brother, Vali. "Where is my dear little brother?" He has made sure to lessen his grip slightly this time, and the girl is able to choke out words despite the hand around her throat. "The master is far from here." He snarls and leans in. "Your usefulness is rapidly coming to an end, love, if you have nothing worthwhile to say." In response, all she says is, my life is yours, my lord." Klaus growls at the passive response and breaks her neck. Given how quickly she'd healed from the crushed throat he'd accidentally given her when he woke up, she'd be fine. Letting her temporarily lifeless body fall to the ground, he stepped over it to the metal door, frowning as he looked the smooth surface over. There is no handle, and when he pushes against it, it does not open. There is a small pad next to the door though, and eventually Klaus places a hand on it, pushing it down. A moment later, the door slides up into the ceiling and Klaus steps through with eyes still narrowed as he took in a strange hallway that the room he'd just been in was at the end of. A sound behind him has him turning around to find the door closing once more. Turning back towards the curving hallway before him, he began to follow its path, eyes moving over his surroundings with wary caution. At the end of the hall was another door with another pad. Klaus wasted no time pressing this one and stepping through into a large room full of people. It looks strangely futuristic, but his eyes are immediately drawn to the front of the room, falling away from the station's people were sitting at. At the front of the room there is a large window, outside of which all he can see is darkness and stars. He steps towards it, frowning, confusion overtaking his simmering rage. As he moves further into the room, he is noticed and someone runs to a man standing at the front of the room to whisper into his ear. Klaus hears every word of course. "Captain? The Lord is awake and on the bridge." The man titled as Captain spins around, eyes wide as he takes Klaus in, before promptly blurring to a stop before him and falling to a knee. "Milord, I am at your service." Klaus growls, "More servants of my brother, I assume?" The captain blinks and looks up from his kneeling position. "Our loyalty is to you, milord. The master has ordered us to serve you in whatever way you desire." Klaus finds himself growling again, but stifles his anger long enough to ask the next question. "Where are we?" The answer he gets is not one he fully understands at first. "We're in space, milord." Klaus furrows his brow. "What?" The captain clears his throat. "We are no longer on Earth, Lord Klaus. What you see around you is a spaceship currently orbiting another world entirely." Klaus' eyes widen at that as he looks once more to the view of space outside before he grits his teeth and looks back to the captain. "So this is how my brother decides to get rid of me? If your loyalty is truly to me, turn us around, take me back to Earth." The captain stands and spreads his arms. "Milord, we would gladly do so, but we were only given enough fuel for a one-way trip. We have been traveling to our new home for almost 100 years now. We are finally here and will land tomorrow." Even as the captain says this, Klaus watches as a large dark green world comes into view outside the window. He's forced to accept what the man says is the truth. For a long moment Klaus just stands there, hands curling into fists and then unclenching over and over again as he contemplates what he will do next, and wonders just how many of these people he needs alive to successfully land this ship. Before he can decide whether or not to start killing, the captain speaks up again. "My lord, the master did leave a pre-recorded message for you, if you are willing to view it." Klaus snarls at the idea but eventually nods. "Fine. Let's see what my brother has to say about this exile." A few moments later a 2D holographic image of Vali appears in front of Klaus' eyes. Klaus frowns and tries to touch it, watching as his hand goes right through his brother's mouth, even as Vali begins to speak. "Hello, brother. Either you killed everyone else in the ship, and this message began on its own, or you let someone talk for long enough to press play for you. I figure there's a 50% chance either way. I would say I'm sorry for all of this, but I'm not. Earth was always going to be too small for both of us, Niklaus, and I can't tell you how many times I considered just killing you outright." On the screen, Vali holds up a white oak stake, smiling grimly as he taps it idly against his empty palm. "Michael's stake was not the last by far. I've been keeping the rest of it safe, to make sure our family is never threatened by this weakness again. Hopefully you've already asked the right questions, but here are the facts of your situation, Nick. It has been 1100 years since I daggered you. And yes, I had a dagger that worked on you, I had one for centuries. It's not important." Vali pauses and Klaus finds himself blowing hot air out of his nose, his fists clenched so hard that his skin was devoid of color, completely white. "When a millennium had passed, our siblings and I got together to decide what to do with you. This was eventually decided to be the best way to let you live, while also keeping you from taking foolish revenge. The crew that you may or may not have slaughtered by now are all hybrids, sired with your blood. The planet below you is relatively close to Earth in many ways, with less oceans and more land masses. There is a race of humanoids who are surprisingly close to humans in biology with a few minor differences, that are still in the tribal stage." Vali smiles, and if it was a solid projection, Klaus probably would have punched it in anger. Instead he manages to refrain from looking like a fool as Vali continues. "Do what you will with your hybrids with the planet below you. If you've killed everyone, there's a nice big red button on the captain's chair that will crash land you on the planet below. If you haven't, you'll probably want to let the crew land the ship themselves. Either way, the ship is rigged to explode in about 5 days, so you and whoever's left alive are going to want to get as far away from it as possible. Good luck, Niklaus. I wish things could have been different, but in the end there just wasn't enough room for 2 original hybrids on my world. The message turns off and the captain's wide eyes replace it. Klaus can't help it. A small smirk grows on his face as he cocks an eyebrow. Didn't know about the explosives until now, did you? He gets a shaky no in response and Klaus can't help it. He begins to laugh. Vali won, Niklaus can't deny that. If he ever finds himself face to face with his younger brother again, he will do his best to hurt him and everything Vali cares about. But even with thoughts of revenge in his head, he can't help the anticipation filling his chest as he looks down at the planet below him. A world with no vervain, no white oak, a world to call his own. He was going to enjoy conquering it. XX scene breaks X. 2013 to 3000 AD. The other side was unanchored and destroyed shortly after I killed Dahlia by Cole's hands. As a gift, I gave him the rather insane awakened Amara to play with. She had none of Silas' magic, none of his telepathy. Beyond her complete immortality, the poor girl was defenseless. Cole certainly enjoyed her. 1,000 years passed in which I conquered and unified the earth under one banner. Not that most of the world's population knew about it. It took 100 years to fix the damage to the earth that humans had managed to do with their pollution and harmful technology. Turns out that when compelled, even the staunchest conservative will go green. It took another 100 years to finally dissolve the last meganations and place the entire world under one government. Everyone thought it was their idea, and everyone was so happy to finally achieve true peace under a single banner. I enjoyed personally designing that banner so that every time I saw it, I was reminded that the entire world rested under my control. In this time, Katarina died as well, a well-placed stake ending her life and sending her to whatever afterlife lay beyond the now-gone other side. I killed her murderer as a matter of course, and grieved her as I would a loyal pet, like a cat or a dog. With Amara never dying, there was a new doppelganger every 500 years, if I truly wanted revisit past flames. For 1,000 years I enjoyed ruling from the shadows, letting people do as they pleased with only the direction that was needed. When that 1,000 years had passed, my siblings and I got together for a little reunion and I asked Finn what he would have me do with Klaus now that his sentence was at its end. It was Finn who came up with the idea of sending Klaus away. Technology had advanced and in 1,000 years humanity had expanded in every direction out of our solar system. Terraforming had made it possible for us to populate the solid planets in our own solar system, but as the population grew, so did the number of colonies that slowly spread outside of our solar system and into the closest ones to us. So I pulled the dagger from Klaus' chest and had a witch desiccate him much like Abby Bennett would have done to Michael in the original timeline. Then we sent him off on his finale voyage with a hybrid crew to keep him company, compelled to not wake him up until they reached their destination. It was possible that one day Niklaus would return, but not likely given the technology level he'd have to reach to get back to us. I truly hoped he'd be happy with a world all his own to control. XX scene breaks X. 3001 to 4000 AD. Over the next 1,000 years my other siblings left the earth behind, and those of my children who found their own routes to immortality did as well. The only ones who stayed by my side were Miranda and Freya, their immortality magic apparently tied to the earth much as my fear of space tied me down. I had new children of course, and over time those left as well. I played my games, had my fun at the expense of mortal and immortals alike, but mostly the years between the 31st and 40th century were marked by my siblings leaving one by one. Elijah and Tadia went first, he still deeply in love with her, and her being the first to realize that if she fled into space, I would not follow. Soon after, Finn and Sage left as well, Sage ever the restless soul who needed to see more of what was out there. Sage and I had reconciled centuries previous though, and she'd managed to corrupt Finn enough that I did eventually get that threesome I'd contemplated so long before. When they finally went, I was happy to watch them go, content to release my hold on them. Rebecca and Marcel went next, one city no longer being enough for Marcel, and him being the second to realize that if he left Earth behind, he would be able to rule a planet without me constantly over his shoulder. I was sad to lose my little sister, but I was not Niklaus and I would not dagger her to keep her with me when I hadn't done so to Elijah or Finn. Cole stayed the longest, afraid to lose access to magic if he left the Earth behind. But eventually enterprising witches made the leap across the black void of space and settled on new worlds, and reports trickled back that there was still magic on those worlds, even if it was different, changed. Cole still held off, perhaps almost as afraid of the unknown as I was, but eventually his curiosity got the best of him and he left just like the others. I wished him the best and watched him go. My family gone, I was probably the most powerful creature left on the earth besides my daughter. Miranda's magic grew with every year, every decade, every century. There came a time when she decided to depose me by herself without Freya's or anyone else's knowledge. Proclaiming that her magic placed her above me, she attacked and I was forced to beat her down. Her magic did not place her above me, unfortunately. Though I could never cast magic myself, my body was so infused with it now, enchantments suffused throughout my organs, runes tattooed across my limbs. I had taken the power of 3 millennia of witches and kept boosting my own strength, my own agility, my own stamina. I forgave Miranda, of course, jovially telling her that like every beautiful woman who attempted my life, she got one freebie and that was it. She paid in spades for her treachery, but she would always be my daughter and I forgave her easily. Truth be told, I'd been getting bored, and her attempt at deposing me had actually been the most fun I'd had in the 40th century. XX Scene Breaks X. 4001 to 4956 AD. That fun led me to begin forming unrest against myself, revealing my evil to groups of vampires and witches, exposing fake weaknesses over the next several centuries, creating my own enemies. At times I even went out and led rebellious groups against myself while under illusions and using Camilla to simulate magic. These war games that nobody knew about but me were more than a little amusing, to the point that at one time Miranda even fell in love with one of my alter egos, after I defeated her soundly while appearing as someone else. I won't sugarcoat things, I ended up in bed with my own daughter for several months before once again the rebellion failed and my poor baby girl was forced to watch as her lover was revealed to be me. She sulked for a time, of course, but eventually it led to us openly sharing a bed, as it would seem that I left quite the impression on her during our intimate time together. This, it turned out, was another trap, as Miranda tried to lull me into a false sense of security to put into action her newest plan, one she'd begun working on with Freya after her first defeat at my hands, 9 centuries previous. And that was what led us to now, with my palace under attack by a combination of the witches, werewolves, and vampires who I'd all been separately playing against me for centuries now. I couldn't help but grin as I sat on my throne and watched the doors break open and the mob enter, Miranda at the forefront with Freya close behind. I was not surprised when Miranda gestured sharply, and my royal guard, all that remained of my most loyal disciples, turned and pointed their weapons at me. Miranda had figured out how to remove compulsion centuries ago, and had turned my first children against me decades before. I'd let it happen without even showing a hint that I knew what was going on. I was the bad guy now, the evil emperor. I was slightly surprised, though, to find Ravia standing with her back to me, her own weapon pointed at the massive army before her even as her comrades turned against me. Standing, I stepped up behind her and placed a hand on her shoulder. Darling Ravia, I know Miranda removed the compulsion from you as well. Yet still you stand with me. Her eyes don't move to me, staying locked on those arrayed before us, but she does speak softly, always master. I sigh and lean down to whisper in her ear, I will never forget your sacrifice, Ravia. Then before she has a chance to react, in a flash of speed that is beyond what most of the people in the throne room can even track, I pull her heart from her chest. She dies instantly, falling into my arms as I gently lay her down, her skin turning gray. While her loyalty is something I will always cherish, she cannot follow where I plan to go, and these people will not treat her kindly once I'm gone. Smiling wickedly, my eyes gold and black and my rows of sharp fangs in display, I spread my arms wide, still holding Ravia's bloody heart as I look down at the faces of those arrayed against me, before focusing on my daughter. Miranda's eyes are wide as she knows exactly how long I'd had Ravia at my side, how much I cared for her. Casually dropping the heart to the ground, I flick the blood off my hands and step over my last loyal disciple's corpse. My firstborn daughter, come to deal with her evil tyrant of a father. I told you before, Miranda, you only get one freebie. Is this what you've assembled to kill me? Do you truly think I cannot cut through this army of yours in a snap of my fingers? Miranda swallows convulsively, her fear of me etched across her face even as she shakes her head. No, father. We aren't here to kill you. I smile at that, good. It's only taken you 1,000 years, but it seems you're finally learning. You may begin the spell, Miranda. Miranda's eyes widen. You know? I chuckle and clasp my hands behind my back. I'm shocked that you thought I didn't, Miranda. Did you not notice that I stopped my own war games over 50 years ago just so you could plan in peace, so that you would have the most resources at your disposal? You've been working on this for a long time, my dear. I've been interested to see what you've cooked up. She regains some of her confidence as she incorrectly assumes I don't know the full plan. She smirks cockily even as she lifts her hands up into the air, and visible magic begins to go to work. You've grown foolish then, old man, not to find out exactly what I've been planning. She begins to chant and her army tenses up, clearly ready to protect her if I make a move, as is their true purpose. I don't though, smile still on my face as she continues her spell to completion. She finishes by thrusting her hands in my direction, and behind me forms a large portal, large enough for multiple people to step through. Miranda is breathing heavily, as are Freya and many of the witches around her. It's clear that Miranda was channeling all of them to form this portal, even as she raises a finger and points at me, before calling to her army of werewolves, vampires, and hybrids. All we have to do now is push him through the portal. No matter how many of us it takes, when he goes through, he's never coming back. Her army roars its approval, and I can't help a smile of fatherly pride that comes across my face. My daughter really has grown up. As they rush forward though, I throw my head back and laugh. It's a testament to my reputation that this causes the front line to falter dramatically, and the entire army freezes up in fear. I laugh for several long moments, Miranda growing angrier and angrier as her forces look to be about ready to turn and run. I hold up a hand as I get control of myself. Sorry. It's just, I must thank you, daughter, for this gift. My own people have never managed what you have done. A transdimensional portal. I turn away from the army to look at it, awe on my face as I smile. Your power truly is unrivaled. Throwing one more look over my shoulder, I wink at Miranda. Have fun with my world, darling. And then I step through into the unknown.